Chapter 1. From Naruto's perspective, I was yelling in agony and suddenly found myself in an empty space. How in the world? A voice greeted with a simple, hello. Naruto hesitantly greeted the unfamiliar guy. You perished in a situation that was unjust, orchestrated by the Konoha Council. Following your demise, your world was plunged into ceaseless agony. With your passing, the remaining cancer cells in your world were exploited for profit, leading to the creation of new and altered versions to capitalize on, despite disease and famine being almost eradicated. Your body was harvested while still alive to extract as many diseases as possible. You departed too soon, and now I'm stepping in to make a difference in this world. You were one of the few remaining good people in your world, more like one of the only ones who were normal. I have decided to send you to a new world while the others move on to the afterlife. They wanted to ensure that the next person who arrived would grant their wishes. You are the final one, and you have a total of 5 wishes. Why are you intervening for the first time and in person? Naruto inquired of the figure he assumed was a higher power. The inhabitants of your world have been consumed by greed to the point where they are willing to create a machine to travel to other universes and corrupt them, risking the destruction of their own universe and beyond. If they had continued, they would have discovered how to travel to other multiverses. It was understandable that they would act in such a way, considering the lack of sense they displayed, particularly with the laws they put into place. And hold on, why am I? I just temporarily removed its capability, the voice said calmly. Sure, it would help me think more clearly. He said my body was harvested while I was still alive, but I have no recollection of it. I'm guessing he erased that memory. Reflecting on my life, I don't really have strong emotions attached to either the good or bad memories. The entity explained that going to a new world with those feelings would prevent one from thinking calmly. Sure, let me ponder my desires. Do they have to be realistic, or can I dream big? I inquired. You can pick, he said. Sure, thanks. My first wish is to become a Kryptonian without any of the limitations imposed on them by Rao. From what I've heard, the Kryptonians used to be able to cast spells and get powers from the stars. These abilities could not be diminished or eradicated via the use of magic or science. Just picture the Kryptonian body being born and growing old at the same rate as I did before I passed away. He said, simple. Naruto expressed his second wish. I want my body to be able to absorb all types of energy and radiation and to manipulate as well. Sure, he replied with a tone that seemed to suggest he was smiling. For his third wish, he desired his soul, mind, and body to be able to adapt to any situation or damage and manipulate the adaptation to an extent. I mentioned how this would keep me safe from being overexposed to energy, all while pondering about doomsday. For my fourth wish, I'd like the crystal that can create the Fortress of Solitude with all its original powers from Superman's early days. It should function in any world and recognize me as its owner, I stated for my fourth wish. For my fifth wish, I want immunity to any mental attack, be they physical or magical, I stated for my final wish. Anything is achievable, but you'll begin with no energy stored, he mentioned, which is totally okay with me. I'll just be a Kryptonian who doesn't really make a big difference. Sure, he replied. Sure, go ahead and pick the world in your appearance. Once you're done, you'll find yourself in a spot within that universe, he mentioned. I'd love to explore a Marvel world similar to the MCU but with a blend of comic elements, free from any controversial themes or character changes, and staying true to the original vision, I mentioned. After that, a customization screen appeared, and I decided to make myself taller. I envisioned how I would look when I matured, with black hair streaked with silver eyes, and my signature whiskers. I achieved a toned physique while maintaining a good-looking face. Once I was done, he inquired whether I preferred to reincarnate or be transported. I opted for transportation. Naruto woke up and saw a familiar sight, as the mysterious being had already briefed him about this world. This is Central Park in New York. It was around noon. As he began strolling around, Naruto could sense the sun's empowering warmth. He then spotted something in my pocket, the crystal. He was pretty pleased about that. From Naruto's point of view later, I discovered a wallet in my back pocket containing $10,000 in cash, along with more money in a bank account totaling around $200,000, identification, an address, and a note indicating that my new home had been paid for in advance for a year. I didn't know much about New York besides the famous landmarks, so I decided to look for a taxi. I hopped in and shared the address with him. He seemed taken aback by my request but still drove me to the destination. Upon my arrival, the place appeared to be a luxurious 5-star hotel. I walked in and requested my room. The man at the front desk asked for my identification, handed me a key, and instructed me to insert it into the elevator to reach the penthouse. Alright, maybe this new life won't be too terrible after all. Upon waking up, I was taken aback by the ability to see with my eyes shut. Soon after, I began to hear various voices and sounds, causing discomfort in my ears. As it began to fade away, I noticed my ability to adapt kicking in, and gradually I began to block out the voices. I had a year to build the fortress and get it up and running. Practicing my powers will be challenging in the city. I need to figure out how to get stronger quickly. I must have been daydreaming. Strange sensation. I'll get used to it, I murmured to myself as I tried out my new voice. Checking out the fortress crystal made me realize I need a couple more days in the sun before I can take off. I wanted to learn more, but then my eyes began to feel warm. I shut them when I noticed I would be using my heat vision in the hotel, and after a while, the heat dissipated. I spotted a vintage desktop resting on a table. I used it to learn more about the world I was in. After a few minutes, I realized that mutants exist, Captain America is real, and Tony Stark has been captured as reported him missing. I need to obtain the blueprints from Vanko. I was surprised to learn that the Fantastic Four actually exist, and Sue looks amazing. I recently discovered that I have a bank account with $40,000, which was a nice surprise. All of a sudden, I found myself hovering slightly and thought it would be nice to relax at the hotel for a while. I was thinking about finding a way to increase my income. After a couple of hours I have some cash now, and it seems like the city thugs are loaded. After taking them down swiftly, I noticed my speed was improving rapidly. Others could hardly catch a glimpse of me as I moved quickly. Currently, I find myself in a forest, soaring through the air. I must have exceeded the sound barrier, as my eardrums feel shattered. While bleeding, I took precautions to dispose of my blood properly to prevent it from falling into the wrong hands. I was considering waiting a few more days before heading to the Arctic. My body has already started adapting, as my ears have healed and I can hear sounds even better now. I splurged a little to prolong my stay at the hotel, shop for new clothes, and wander around the city. I want to learn magic and was thinking I could pick up Zatanna's magic skills at the fortress. After a few days, I planned to fly above the clouds to recharge while heading to the Arctic. It was amazing to feel myself getting stronger and eventually reaching the Arctic. I didn't really mind the cold, and I either adapted to it or my powers kept me feeling okay in these conditions. I had a clear plan in mind as I surveyed the desolate area for a few miles. I had chosen a spot to construct my fortress, deep underground beneath the ice to keep it hidden from prying eyes. I remembered where it was and got it ready. I watched as it captured the ice crystals and transformed them into something unfamiliar. Within moments, the process was finished, and I headed indoors towards the crystal panel. Hey, I greeted it responded and I was taken aback when it started downloading the kryptonian language into my mind. My defenses were down, and before I knew it, it was all over. I picked up a new language in just a few seconds. I inquired about its current capabilities, and it mentioned that the replication technology was available along with several others. I was mainly interested in downloading information into my brain. However, it cautioned me about the potential risk of information overload leading to death. After leaving the fortress, I flew up to recharge and then instructed it to download all its data on Earth. I had plans for various androids, but the construction android seemed like the most useful one. It should be able to fulfill most of my needs and preferences. Without the necessary materials, most of the technology ended up being useless. The main concern is the energy supply for the fortress. While it came with some energy, it is not unlimited. I may need to acquire or replicate Vanko's reactor for additional energy since the sun crystals that power the fortress are not available. I could potentially learn to create the crystals, but it would involve building the required androids or using my magic once I figure out how. While I was looking at some information on the screen, a note suddenly popped up with the following message. I was protected from most things in the Marvel universe for a while, except for the Living Tribunal. Because of my presence, he brought some of Superman's foes here, like Doomsday, luckily not Darkseid or Imperiax. I was scared that the only way to deal with Doomsday would be through a black hole or by taking him to the end of time. But then it hit me that I wouldn't have to face them on my own. I can't handle everything solo, at least not yet. After some time, I found myself enjoying the sunshine up in the clouds, completely naked as my clothes burned off. My bioelectric aura hadn't covered them yet, and my kryptonian suit was being created by the replication machine. It would take some time due to the unique rules of this multiverse. I realized I would need to make a few more suits using the different materials available. The fortress also included blueprints for kryptonian weapons. Even though they might appear insignificant, I recognized their hidden value. Even if a few of my ideas don't work out, I can still repurpose some kryptonian materials for different projects. Some of these weapons have the power to harm even an average Asgardian. After acquiring my suit, which was incredibly comfortable, I set out to track down Clow to obtain his vibranium. By combining it with PIM particles, I essentially had an unlimited supply of vibranium at my disposal. I gotta locate Clow before anything else. Although PIM particles aren't consistently portrayed this way in all comics, certain objects have been permanently altered in size based on the writer's interpretation. I went back to the fortress to do a bioscan on myself just to be safe in case I started mutating due to my adaptation. I started planning to deal with some of the villains. I have to go to Morag to pick up the Power Stone. As long as I possess an Infinity Stone, Thanos will seek me out. I also want to prevent certain individuals from obtaining powers because they can cause harm as much as they can do good. Two great examples are Sentry and the Void. Even after combining, they still manage to cause significant destruction. I'll have to keep an eye on Peter Parker because the Inheritor might come for him at some point, or maybe they've already been taken care of. I'm not sure. I was considering how to gain access to Hank Pym's residence. When I considered finding some allies, perhaps I could encounter the Ancient One, but they could potentially create issues down the line, and may not be open to instructing me in the magic I desire. I have a dimension that I need. I hurried back to the fortress and spotted the Phantom Zone projector, Crystal. So the issue got resolved, and I realized I was much quicker than before, which was great. I was only halfway back to New York and felt relieved that I had developed my bioelectric aura. Also, when it comes to dimensions, I found the perfect one to use for resources instead of gathering them from asteroids, the negative zone. If I could get my hands on it, I wouldn't have to worry about resources. If I couldn't access the PIM particle formula, this would be my backup plan. I was getting a bit ahead of myself. I had to address the energy problem at the fortress before anything else. Fortunately, I designed the suit so that I can easily remove the cape and wear regular clothes over it without any inconvenience. I was planning to have the AI at the fortress connect and monitor the internet, but it cautioned me that with the remaining energy, it wouldn't last for more than a month. I decided to cancel that order. I found myself feeling quite isolated and unsure of who I could rely on. Thinking about this, I realized I would require a forge to reach over 5,000 degrees Celsius to melt it and a deeper understanding of how to shape it into various forms. I've chosen to prioritize my training for now. I practiced honing my heat vision to achieve the precision needed for laser surgery. It just wasn't functioning properly. I relocated my fortress to the North Pole, and it required quite a bit of energy to accomplish. I thought about the Savage Land and decided to explore the Arctic to see it. It seemed really cool, but I'm not too concerned about it at the moment. I managed to get my hearing under control. I could remember heartbeats and locations, but not the whole world. While I was documenting my abilities, I thought about visiting multiple radiation sites to absorb energy. However, I was concerned about the potential risk of becoming radioactive myself. It turns out that the radiation I absorb becomes mine, which in simple terms becomes a part of me. I can create different results. I was able to use the power to give someone a miracle. The person I helped had multiple third-degree burns, and with the radiation, he began to heal when the sun hit him. Although he still had some first- and second-degree burns, at least he wouldn't die. I tried to use it again for a week, and somehow I had adapted as well. I think my body made it possible for me to use it with yellow sunlight after getting that first dose of different energy radiation. It was quite exhausting for me. When I finally understood, I could barely stay airborne. Luckily, I managed to rise above the clouds and relax there for a few hours. I might have to learn more about it because it could pose a risk to a person's health and well-being. So, I discovered that the fortress has the ability to give Jonathan Kent kryptonian powers to help him stop a wild Clark Kent under the influence of red kryptonite. I was confident in my ability to absorb any form of energy, so I considered absorbing an Infinity Stone. I quickly dismissed it when I saw what happened to Peter Quill when his celestial adaptation ability started to handle the Power Stone for a while before it started to kill him because his body couldn't adapt anymore. My version was inspired by Doomsday's level, and luckily, I had the information in my wallet because it was his version that I used as a reference. Perhaps I didn't have to take in all of it, just a sufficient amount to give me a boost. I planned to test the Mind Stone since my powers are closely connected to my mind. I was aware of having telekinetic abilities, but unsure of their full potential. A future version of Superboy was able to defend himself from magical attacks and manipulate particles to shield himself from kryptonite using his telekinetic powers. Maybe the Mind Stone could help me reach Jean Grey's telekinesis and telepathy abilities faster instead of relying on natural progression. The space stone might help me understand my teleportation abilities better, like how hell could teleport after absorbing energy from stars like neutron stars or quasars. I have no idea how the other stones will react to me. One interesting point is that my absorption extends to all forms of energy, including kinetic energy. Imagine if I could learn magic to create my own pocket dimension that I could carry with me wherever I go. I could channel the kinetic energy to create my own version of the Speed Force.
It was a bit of a stretch, but if it didn't work, maybe I could send excess energy into it. Even though my own body may allow me to adapt to it, it's too dangerous and all too real to risk it. It's beneficial to have my own pocket dimension. While pondering the situation, it dawned on me that I had to create an energy source for the fortress. Perhaps using the space stone or a similar concept. It was time to head over to Vanko to get the blueprint for the reactor.
5 hours have passed. I ordered the A while on the fortress. I managed to locate his whereabouts without raising any alarms, but it took me an hour to do so. Once I found out where he was, I advised conserving energy and headed over after studying a couple of maps. I spotted Vanko in the building with his father. I was ready to take action, but then I discovered that his mom had passed away. So, I just went ahead and used my speed to make a copy of it, including a few things that wouldn't be noticed, and left the original in its place. I hurried over to the fortress, and it informed me of its requirements. I traveled the world collecting items for the reactor. It took about 10 hours. It took 6 more attempts to gather the materials for the droid that will be making things for me. The fortress successfully created the droid and linked it to the reactor while I spent some time in New York dealing with a few gangs. I caught Wilson Fisk's eye, but he only realized someone was interfering with his operations. While I was keeping an eye out for updates on Tony Stark, I heard the distinct screeching noise emitted by the fortress. Everything was set with the reactor. Later, I traveled the world collecting raw minerals and bringing them back to the fortress to create various droids for different purposes. It took me a couple of days to prepare the materials. This was starting to become boring. Fortunately, I managed to get it up and running smoothly.
I spent a few days up in the clouds. It was going to be my inaugural space exploration experience. I began by moving cautiously, afraid of succumbing to the cold. By the way, I managed to create a teleporter with the droids, but I couldn't find all the materials needed to make a complete teleporter. So, I could only travel within the solar system. It would lock onto me and teleport me back to the fortress, saving me travel time. I couldn't make the machine any smaller.
As I left Earth, I could feel my strength increasing. While I couldn't go for a sun dip yet, I decided to set up some mines to gather resources from asteroids. Just like with the PIM particle, the formula plan is still on track. I want it and I will make sure to get it, no doubt about that. That formula must be in Hank's mind because there are no records or files of it. I managed to access his vault and found the Ant-Man suit and a few vials, but nothing else connected to it. I think he probably committed the formula to memory. Without telepathy, I won't be able to obtain the formula. I might also come into possession of a small vibranium asteroid. As I ventured out, I noticed my body was freezing over, so I promptly asked the fortress to teleport me back. When I got there, I noticed the medical droids I had created to assist with my recovery in case of injury. I accidentally cracked the ice or frosting on myself. While I have the potential to venture into space, I must proceed with caution at the moment because Kal-El had many years to harness solar energy, unlike me. I'm getting help from the medical droids after almost freezing in space, so I could use some extra energy. While I was chilling out, I decided to grab something to soak up some sunlight in the solarium, a room specifically designed for me to get some sun that way. I can find a secure spot to relax and recuperate. I was thinking of getting the new element created by Iron Man because it's like a pseudo-infinity stone. Perhaps I could become even more potent than basking in the sunlight. This is more on the theoretical side. I'm not sure if it would work that way or not. I've noticed that my strength is increasing at a faster rate. In the near future, I may be able to continue using my abilities without relying on sunlight. I need to learn how to defend myself without relying solely on my physical abilities. I've been studying Torquasm Vo, a kryptonian mental discipline that involves meditating to reach a theta state. This state enables mind reality warping, mental combat, and resistance to attacks like transmutation and soul attacks. When I was puzzled about reality warping in the mind, I realized it allows me to combat anyone who enters my mind by altering the mental environment. It's always good to have something when you need it, rather than being caught without it. This was going to be crucial because it includes meditation techniques. Even though they might not appear significant, these tools have truly been a lifesaver for me. They've greatly helped me manage my powers, which I believe are more instinctual compared to Cal's, who took years to develop his abilities to their current level. I've been exploring Torquasm Rao as well, tapping into the theta state through Torquasm Vo. Using all my senses to their maximum capacity, it's similar to a spider sense but also reminds me of Ultra Instinct because it enhances the body's strength limit. On average, a person can utilize around 40 to 50% of their strength, whereas a professional bodybuilder can tap into 60 to 65%. This limitation exists because our brain cannot process all the signals from muscle cells simultaneously, serving as a protective mechanism to prevent self-harm. Kryptonians can typically utilize 60 to 70% of their power with this technique, but my calculations suggest they could potentially reach up to 95%. If I push my body beyond its limits, it will naturally adapt and increase my strength. It could be the reason Zod was occasionally able to challenge Superman. His background as a general and years of experience enhanced his abilities. Superman doesn't often need to use his strength without sunlight. General Zod did, which might explain why Superman was able to lift about 3 times the weight of the Earth without any solar energy, as he was being exposed to red sun radiation. Later on, his abilities grew significantly, and his physical prowess expanded to the extent that he could repeat it for a week even without sunlight. It's similar to the issue with Super Saiyan. The transformation is undeniably strong, but it can become a reliance. Picture a Kryptonian constantly in the Super Saiyan transformation. Imagine Superman's power level is 5000 with sunlight, while Zod's power level is 85 without sunlight. When Zod gets sunlight, his power level increases significantly to 4250. The problem with Superman is that he rarely taps into his full physical power. Kryptonians have the potential to surpass others in power. The Fortress shared that the Council of Krypton prohibited any Kryptonian from encountering stars other than a red one. Here's why they wear space-armored suits when they venture off-world to places similar to Earth. I think Rao might have manipulated them in some way because when Superman made a pact with the Source itself, he was freed from his control. It also suggests that Superman was born, not made by a machine. With the limited codex and Genesis chamber, the knowledge in the Fortress is contained. I could create my own army, and it's tempting to form a powerful Amazonian army solely made up of soldiers and potential mothers to expand the gene pool. Sure, I'll go ahead and do it. Later on, if I do, they could end up getting captured, and if they worship me, I might become a god in the Marvel universe. I stopped in my tracks and facepalmed so quickly that it felt like a sonic boom. That's why the Avengers always manage to survive the impossible or showcase remarkable feats compared to their previous ones. Admiring a hero could potentially elevate me to godlike status. Heroes are often viewed as godlike figures by civilians, leading some to worship them. It empowers them and clarifies how they manage to return without any negative consequences, even after being severely injured. They basically get faith energy instead of the gods they believe in. I finally got it. How Captain America managed to restrain Thanos while he possessed 5 Infinity Stones. That's why a lot of supernatural beings are interested in Earth and how some of them ended up here. Considering the context of Marvel, any explanation could be valid when it comes to humans worshipping them as gods. Check out Thor, being an alien and still called the god of thunder. He seems to believe that having power doesn't make someone a god, but simply equips them to handle the current situation. Remember when Loki used a birthstone to assist in battling the void? I was reflecting on the hero civil war and how certain heroes were shunned by society due to media manipulation. Those who were not supported saw their power diminish, while those who registered were viewed as heroes over the so-called villains. While the droids were completing the mines on Jupiter, I thought about how the teleporter connects to the fortress to send supplies there. I wanted to create armor inspired by the Hellbat from Batman, which enabled a human in top physical condition to face Darkseid. I'll need to dedicate a significant amount of time and effort to researching this armor. It's not common to see Superman in armor. Superboy Prime, on the other hand, wears a suit that harnesses yellow sunlight, but it's unclear if it's made of special materials. I searched the area thoroughly, hoping to spot any unfamiliar metal, but came up empty-handed. I was let down, but maybe I'll come across some later. I didn't make much progress in magic, but the fortress had some knowledge of it. The Kryptonians avoided it due to the serious consequences it had on their world. They abandoned all magic-related activities after a demon was summoned and caused a massive loss of life, leading to the Genesis Chamber's creation. I used basic spells such as elemental magic, but aside from that, I discovered that I have a magic core because some Kryptonians also have them. However, I wanted to break free from Rao's restrictions and schemes, so I was granted a wish. Initially, it was disconnected from my body's method of harnessing solar power. Then I realized I could manipulate my body to adapt, so I used magic to empty my core. I considered the sunlight as a way to recharge my body. It took some time and reflection to adjust my core to utilize sunlight for recharging. It worked better than expected. I realized that my body must have used most of the energy it absorbed to make the adaptation possible. I took a break because I had just started moving quickly around the world again, and now I'm back to traveling at Mach 3 speed. Luckily, my body quickly used the energy to adapt. When I was exposed to sunlight, my absorption rate remained constant, but my core charged up 3 times faster. I saw an improvement because it used to take me about 17 hours to fully charge before. It took me 5 hours, which might not sound like a lot, but it was progress. I'm willing to try anything at this point, especially since I've had the fortress scan the earth for any villains I remember from DC Comics. I discovered someone who managed to survive an encounter with a gray-skinned monster and bony-looking spikes before it vanished. I immediately recognized who it was. Doomsday. I'm really anxious about Doomsday showing up. I don't feel prepared to face him at all. All I could think of was possibly sending him into the Phantom Zone. There's a concern that he might escape from it. Perhaps I could inquire with the Ancient One about sending him to the end of time. I'm not sure about the gender of the Ancient One. However, I am aware that the divine protection I currently have will soon diminish. I might attempt to influence him, but I'm clueless on where to start. Despite the fortress being a great resource for information and technology, it has its limitations. I won't be taking any unnecessary risks from now on. I just learned about the mutants and it appears they have made themselves known to the world. Luckily, they are the comic version, and Logan resembles Hugh Jackman, with a more muscular physique like Dwayne Johnson, although he is quite small. I found Juggernaut, or the Crimson Gem of Sidorak, quite intriguing. I'm aware that I have the ability to absorb energy. Maybe I can even gain control over the Crimson Dimension. However, I have only a limited understanding of magic. I've been making progress with my telekinesis abilities. It's similar to a muscle. The more I use it, the better my control and ability to lift heavier items. Making a shield like a bubble is tough. I have to make sure nothing can get in or out. It managed to handle an RPG I got from Wilson's Fisk Armories, but it gave me a headache for the whole day. When I went to assist the Avengers, I made up my mind to take the Mind Stone from Loki. I'll have to break the scepter. I wasn't going to allow Vision or Ultron to remain here. I was hoping to get to know Wanda better because they seem different from their MCU version. They are the same age as me. I intended to spare Pietro because I had some positive plans for him, nothing negative, but rather something very advantageous. Wanda is considered one of the most powerful characters because she can alter reality effortlessly when her mind is shattered by loss, so I must be ready to handle such a situation. I've been pondering Hulk and the challenge he poses, given his connection to Hell in the comics. I altered the narrative a bit because, while the Immortal Hulk storyline might resonate with some, I personally feel it stripped away a lot of the character's essence. I could attempt to find a solution that would give Bruce control over Hulk. I was considering experimenting with my telepathy. I was planning to enlist some individuals for it. Although I could pick up on their surface thoughts, I didn't have the ability to choose what I wanted to perceive just yet. I took them out to get my first kills. I don't even feel bad about it since I discovered their crimes, and one of them was even harassed and killed. They were very passionate about working with children under the age of 12. One of them was Hydra. I used crystal to extract their memories and then damaged their brains. I cremated their bodies. All of a sudden, I had this sensation that something was detaching from me. The shield was disappearing. I requested the fortress to activate all of its defense mechanisms, and just like that, the shield disappeared. Within moments, I sensed multiple eyes on me, and the fortress began to tremble. I retreated into my mindscape, witnessing my mental walls holding strong against every assault on my mind. Luckily, I decided to place the entrance to my soul within my mind. I witnessed a few of the attacks. 3 women were standing in front of a tapestry, tossing strings in my direction. I even caught Mephisto attempting to invade my thoughts. I also noticed other creatures, not being aggressive, but observing me with interest. There were numerous beings attempting to invade my thoughts, so I chose to fight back. I was aware that they wouldn't give up until I belonged to them. I imagined the attacks coming back at them with 10 million times more force than they originally used. They all stormed out angrily after I unintentionally caused some of them to fall into a comatose state. One by one, they all started to leave, except for those who were still attempting to control me. I considered evicting everyone and strengthening my defenses to the maximum, then everything came to a halt. I slowly opened my eyes and saw the Ancient One from the MCU. I inquired about her preferences, and she was curious about my identity and mentioned she couldn't see me with the time stone. I inquired if she believed I posed a threat despite lacking insight into my past, present, or future. She noticed other people around when I talked to them. She mentioned that I could be a potential threat. After that, I witnessed her utilizing the time stone. I started feeling my body shift back before I managed to align my magic with solar energy. Oh no, I started utilizing my energy absorption and adaptation skills to draw energy from my surroundings to maintain my equilibrium and enable my body to adjust to counteract some time-related abilities that were causing me discomfort as I pushed my body to adapt to the power of the stone. Her expression was one of surprise when she witnessed me enduring the power of the time stone and then absorbing it. Cracks resembling the color green started to show up on me. However, after putting all my energy into making my adaptation happen, it finally started to work. Now, I stated, "Hey, can we chat?" I recalled a small detail while trying to enhance my body's resilience to the time stone. I believed it protected me from time-based attacks. However, I didn't consider incorporating time-based attacks. I tried using the last of my energy to find something to attack with, but ended up just keeping it on standby. The Ancient One appeared quite surprised and, dare I say, frightened. I rendered the greatest weapon at her disposal useless. I felt like I was silently shouting. I moved closer as she reacted and got ready for a confrontation. "Hey, you literally just witnessed me do that. If I wanted you dead, you would be already," I stated. She relaxed her posture but remained vigilant. I asked the fortress to create 2 chairs and a table. The ice started to rise and shape into what I requested. She inquired about my name. "I'm Naruto L," I said. The Ancient One inquired, "Not a name from Earth?" "No, I'm from Krypton," I replied. She exclaimed, "An alien?" "Yeah, from another planet," I replied, looking confused at her question. She glanced over at me, anticipating my next words. I started sharing what I knew and kind of used Superman's background as my own, not that I could get a copyright strike. Adapting slightly to match the Marvel universe, I could sense blood filling my mouth. I might have pushed my adaptation too far, but I managed to restrain it.
Ancient One. If his origins are indeed accurate, he is the final member of his community. However, this fact alone would not have enabled him to absorb the power I unleashed, yet his body managed to adapt to it. It seemed like I couldn't revert his body back to a state where he would be easier to eliminate.
However, I can't take the chance of him becoming more accustomed to the time stone if he gets controlled, which would be quite an impressive accomplishment. Based on my observations, he managed to effortlessly push away those thoughts, although it was a risky move. Listening to his backstory, he mentioned being raised on Earth. However, I couldn't help but notice that despite his mature appearance, he was actually just a teenager on the brink of turning 15. It was also clear that he had a natural talent for magic, particularly elemental magic. Perhaps I could propose a trade with him. I teach him magic, and he agrees to protect Earth. I might have considered this carefully. I was taken aback by his actions. Also, I was feeling anxious even though I didn't display it outwardly. I snapped out of my thoughts when I heard him. I enthusiastically agreed, only to realize that I had accidentally vocalized my thoughts. Oh no. I was intrigued and even more surprised when she offered to teach me magic in return. I'd like to learn magic. I figured she wouldn't be the one to teach me. Primarily, it would involve self-study more than anything else. Learning how to enchant items can really help you become more powerful. It was surprisingly easy, considering this is now my home too. I didn't lose anything, but I gained a lot. She appeared more disappointed in herself than in me. She casually mentioned the location of the New York sanctum, even though I was already aware of it, and then left quickly. I was taken aback by how swiftly I departed, but then recalled my actions. Am I being foolish?
After the Ancient One departed, I blacked out in a puddle of my own blood streaming from my mouth, nose, eyes, and ears. I woke up with my medical droids taking care of me in the medical area of the fortress. I knew it was a bit risky to do that, but I'm hoping that once I absorb the powers of the Mind Stone, the pain will be reduced. Physically, I appeared fine, but mentally, I was exhausted. I'm going to take a quick nap.
Several days passed. I feel foolish. I've been trying for the past few hours since I woke up a few days later to see if I had gained any new powers, but unfortunately, I didn't. I know I've adapted and gained resistance against time-related powers, but that seems to be it. I don't know what I received from it, but I realized I shouldn't have acted impulsively. I was upset and started to panic when she started using the time stone. Fortunately, simply being able to withstand time attacks will be beneficial in the future. I still have some energy left from the time stone for a little project of mine. I was considering visiting a different town to work on my telepathy skills and acquire the PIM particle. Although it was going to render my minds ineffective, it was comforting to know that I could still use them a few more times. After finishing practice, I headed to his place and noticed it was already dark outside, so I had some time to spare. He was sleeping when I woke him up and asked him to deal with the ants. I observed him as he got up and took care of the situation. I swiftly had him open the window and handed him an empty notebook along with 2 pens. He wrote quickly, but I double-checked to ensure it was genuine. While looking through his memories, I discovered that some were missing, not just suppressed. I explored his thoughts further and came across a memory of a bald man in a wheelchair meeting with him once. That's how he manages to fund his education, plus he's got the formula. I need to be cautious in how I approach this, since the individual was, "Hey, it's Charles Xavier." After addressing that, I attempted to check if he had relocated the memory within his mind, but I couldn't locate any details about their encounter except for Charles requesting funding for his school. Following some hazy moments, there was a time jump, leaving me wondering what Charles did to Hank. After a couple more minutes of observing, I spotted something. Following his discussion with Charles, he started to act more distant and aloof towards his daughter, Hope Pym or Van Dyne, after a disagreement where he implied she would have perished instead of Janet. What on earth? I knew Charles was the type to always justify his actions with the greater good. Seriously, he's a more skilled telepath than I am. With his experience and mental power, he could have easily obtained the formula. He was looking for something different from Hank Pym. I wonder what he wanted with him. Then it crossed my mind. Maybe he intended to utilize Hank to assist mutants in finding a secure position in the world. After some digging, I discovered that Hank had previously worked at Cheel, confirming my suspicions. He didn't have a positive view of mutants because one of them almost bothered Janet, but he was able to rescue her while they were Ant-Man and Wasp. What Charles did left him with a mixed opinion because he began to focus more on his company and stopped caring about them altogether. I was planning to help him with his thoughts, but then I realized, why should I bother? I'm not concerned about the mutants. It suddenly hit me that the Sentinels are like the less powerful versions of Amazo. Although not usually a big deal for me, I noticed that things spiraled out of control and started messing up the planet. If they are able to replicate even a fraction of my abilities, this world will be in chaos. I could really use a break right now. Adjusting my backpack over my shoulder, I strolled into Midtown High School. So, it wasn't my original plan, but the Ancient One thought I needed some company. I agreed because, to be honest, I was curious to see it for myself. I might have the opportunity to meet Peter Parker, Harry Osborn, or Gwen Stacy. To be honest, I've missed chatting with folks. I've been really focused on building my strength that I almost forgot to take some time to relax and enjoy myself. Well, the video games I'm familiar with haven't been created yet. I'm feeling pretty bored between training in my powers and studying at the fortress, especially since the Ancient One hasn't taught me anything yet. I've attempted the Speed Force equation multiple times until I grew weary of repeating it. Well, it's disappointing that there's no kryptonian speedster, but if one of my plans works out, I might be able to create an artificial speed force like they did in the Flash TV show. However, that will have to wait. I entered the building without relying on X-ray vision to check out the new surroundings. I'm actually enjoying my time at school, even though a part of me might not admit it. I'm feeling a bit nervous about starting at a new school. Perhaps this won't be too terrible. I received my schedule, and it seemed pretty straightforward with some AP classes, but they shouldn't slow me down. Luckily, I decided to purchase a printer and a few other items for schoolwork. The events from Iron Man unfolded in a grander manner compared to the movie. Tony battled Stain, and it seemed like they caused destruction equivalent to about 4 blocks. The Iron Man suit was actually more advanced than depicted in the movies, and Ironmonger was surprisingly agile despite his size. Anyway, besides that, there haven't been any more reports of Doomsday. However, I'm still cautious because he could be anywhere on the planet. I told the Ancient One about him, and she agreed that he is too dangerous. From the description I gave her of him and his abilities, she seemed shocked that there is someone that old. She inquired about how I was aware. I learned from the fortress that they were able to banish him from the universe, but he has found a way back. I explained to her that even trapping him in a timeless dimension would not be sufficient, as he would eventually find a way to escape. I explained that the only way to completely destroy him was to send him to the end of everything. It was a bit rough, but it was the best idea I could come up with to get her to assist me. She agreed to it after witnessing the destruction caused by the Time Stone, which even led to one of the sanctums being destroyed. So, we were on the same page, and she guided me to a school where she assisted me with the enrollment process. Feeling a bit bored, you might wonder. The formula for PIM particles is quite complex. After going over Hank's notes, I found instructions on how to build a machine to collect the particles and the correct chemical formula for storing and using them. Now it was a breeze to find and buy the chemicals. The only issue was the gathering part. Oh, the gathering. The PIM particles function by transferring matter to the cosmos dimension when reducing an object's size or by drawing additional matter from that dimension when enlarging it. It contributes substance. Isn't that familiar? With repeated exposure, someone might even start making their own PIM particles, which is both correct and incorrect. They were truly enchanting. I inquired with the Ancient One about it. She verified that Hank had been experimenting with a basic type of magic through the lens of science in the 1980s. Consider the amazing quartet. One of them gained a connection to a dimension that allows him to catch on fire, Johnny Storm. Continually being around these particles could potentially link you to this dimension. Now, let's get back to the problem. It usually takes Hank about a week for his machine to collect enough particles to fill up 20 vials. Here's the deal. The machine needs to be left alone, no distractions, or else, all the gathered information will be lost. I created the machine using resources from the fortress, but I designed it to produce the equivalent of 10 gallons of PIM particles. Even though I could create a smaller machine, the fortress just managed to handle it. The machine was as big as a living room and consumed a large portion of the resources collected from the space mines. Hank is a brilliant mind that often goes unnoticed. The machine should be done in about 3.5 months based on my calculations. While waiting for it, I considered chilling out at school to feel normal again, and I definitely need to unwind. A few minutes passed by. I made it to my first class. It was an AP history class. I didn't see anyone I knew from the comics except for someone named Liz Allen. I recall from the comics that she ended up marrying Harry Osborn and they had a son together. She appears quite attractive, almost certain to blossom into a true beauty. However, her personality leaves much to be desired. Upon seeing me, she immediately sneered in disgust. I want to mention that I'm working on creating a nerdy persona, complete with specific clothing and glasses. The glasses serve a dual purpose of style and safety. Standing by the teacher's desk, I gave him my schedule and he requested me to introduce myself to the class. Hey, everyone. I'm Aiden Kent, I stated. I already took his backstory. Why not include his name as well? If anyone has a problem with the name Earth, as TFS Purunga said, they can take it up with me. I'm really into science and dream of becoming a scientist in the future. I was really exaggerating, but I wanted to do something like this for fun. Later, I sat next to someone whose name I didn't bother to remember. I was a bit nervous, even though I tried to hide it. Feeling a bit nervous on the first day. The class ended quickly. After that, I had my AP English class. There, I spotted someone chatting with a light blonde girl who would be quite attractive as she got older. After that, I spotted Peter Parker. He resembled a mix of Tom Holland and Andrew Garfield, but even more attractive. I caught a glimpse of the most stunning girl with vibrant red hair and captivating green eyes. Her figure was so striking that even under her loose clothing, it was impossible to miss. I introduced myself with the same speech I gave on the first day of class since the teacher hadn't shown up yet. When something hit my mental defenses and I turned to look at the culprit, Jean Grey appeared shocked that she couldn't read my mind. Shortly after, a stunning redhead entered the scene, resembling Jean's older sister with an even more impressive figure. She excitedly shared the news that the class professor had won an all-expenses-paid trip to Hawaii for 3 years. She then revealed that she would be taking over as the English teacher for the year, introducing herself as Natalie Rushman. I was completely freaking out. Oh, I know that name. Natasha Romanova, also known as the Black Widow. Alright, perhaps she's not here for me. It didn't take long for me to realize she was interested in Peter Parker. I peeked into her mind and realized someone else was doing the same. I just started my schoolwork while I brushed off Jean's nervousness about finding out who the teacher really is. I noticed that she would occasionally glance at Peter when he started doing other tasks while working, then quickly look away, but I did notice it. She wasn't very attentive to me even though the task was a bit unusual for the day. As soon as I completed the assignment, I got up to turn it in, and she began to review it. When I saw Peter struggling with the assignments, alarm bells started going off in my head and a voice in my head said, "This is the moment he realized he made a mistake." I swiftly and attentively delved into her thoughts and realized that our actions were part of a SHIELD evaluation exam. I wanted to quickly grab the paper and point out that I made a mistake in one of the questions. Glancing back, I noticed her staring wide-eyed at the paper. I felt like giving myself a good punch in the face. Heading back to my desk, I sensed someone's gaze on me. It was pretty obvious who it was, no need to be a genius. After feeling someone attempting to enter my mind, I realized it was Jean. I glanced over and saw her still making the effort. She decided to call it quits with a slight grin on her face. I couldn't help but wonder, why me? I felt like disappearing and never coming back. Skipping ahead after school, I was feeling down about myself and regretting my choice of outfit. Starting tomorrow, I've chosen to wear regular clothes. I didn't run into anyone else I know. Heading back to my apartment, when Flash Thompson showed up. "Hey, you're the new kid, right? You still need to go through initiation," he said. Just as I was about to give him a piece of my mind, Harry Osborn walks by with Norman. "Perhaps another time, blockhead," I replied before leaving to avoid any potential conflict. I left in a hurry because he appeared shocked by what he thought was a nerd saying that to him. Later, I left and headed into an alley before running back to my penthouse. Today has been quite a mess. I felt mentally drained as I was about to wrap up my homework when I wondered if I could somehow connect with Natasha Romanoff no matter where she was. I quickly located her as she appeared to be engaged in a conversation with someone. When I first heard the name of the school, I decided to give it a try. I was curious about the person speaking because their voice was a bit muffled. They were providing a progress report and mentioning if there was anyone important involved. After she provided detailed information about me, I felt like crying and regretted my lack of foresight. Now that she reported me to SHIELD, it's probable that Hydra is also aware of the situation. Fast forward a few days. I had some trouble keeping a low profile since school let out. I'd definitely spot Natasha trailing behind me. That was pretty annoying, but on the bright side, I have X-ray vision which came in handy. Friday, as soon as school was out, Jean sprinted past me in tears. I was curious about her actions until I sensed a sudden impact on my metal defenses. I had my defenses retaliate against the intruder since it wasn't Jean. As I was doing that, I noticed someone flying after Jean. They were decked out in armor and had a silly helmet with metal pipes encircling them. Magneto. I'll probably regret this sooner or later. When I noticed everyone was watching Magneto, I quickly ducked into an alleyway and stripped down because I had forgotten to put on my cape with my costume. Later, I headed in the direction of the sounds of Magneto attacking Jean. I caught up to him quickly and tapped him on the shoulder. He spun back and looked surprised when he noticed me. I swiftly used my palm to push him with enough force to knock the wind out of him and send him flying a bit far. "Hey, everything okay?" I inquired with Jean. She replied with Aiden. I let out a sigh. "Let's keep this between us," I said to her. She nodded and then her eyes widened. She shouted a warning. I turned around and noticed a metal pipe coming towards me in slow motion. I allowed it to hit me, and then it shattered. I was pretty pumped because it was my first time getting into a fight. To be honest, I was a little scared. I remember when I was Janine with no experience, and I hope I've learned not to overestimate myself. As I geared up for the battle, I couldn't help but feel overwhelmed by the speed of everything. Things went from slow to tedious in a week with my problems. First, I go to school, and then I see Peter Parker, but we haven't had much of a chance to talk. Next, Jean and Black Widow arrive, followed by Magneto. After pondering for a bit, I reached a decision. Someone was speeding up events. Magneto kept relentlessly attacking me with metal objects. I understand his intentions were to harm me by breaking them and then using the pieces to encircle me. Shortly after, I was proven right as I effortlessly broke free from my restraints and soared towards him. As I was about to punch him, I felt that familiar presence attempting to invade my thoughts, so I forcefully pushed them away. Just as I was about to reach him, I zapped him with my heat vision, sending him flying once more. Just as I was about to take action, I heard someone call out my name, and I turned to see Jean on the ground, clutching her head. I looked across the street and noticed a bald man in a wheelchair with Logan, who had metal covering his entire skeleton and 3 claws on each hand. Next to them was a striking dark-skinned woman with long white hair and glowing eyes. Despite her beauty, her fierce scowl caught my attention. I said I was going to eliminate Magneto by stabbing his chest with my hand, similar to how Joker perished in Injustice. Logan jumped towards me. I lifted him in the air using my telekinetic powers when he got too far away. I'll need to work on it later. As I was about to finish off Magneto, a portal suddenly opened up, revealing the arrival of the Ancient One. "Hold on, don't harm him, he will be necessary," she stated. I sighed. I know this will come back to haunt me later. I left him on the ground and didn't even acknowledge him, then went to see how Jean was doing. Charles and the others began walking towards me, and I could tell he was a bit scared as he glanced at Jean. I approached her and began to delve into her mind, observing the devastation that had affected every corner of her thoughts. I was aware that Charles had done this. He pretty much exposed every secret she had in her life, even when she accidentally walked in on her parents making love. Someone's life automatically creates a mindscape, like a library where they can pick up books and read, representing the remembering aspect of the mind. Jean had lockers to keep her secrets and book stands to organize her thoughts. Fortunately, her mind would heal naturally as I observed the locks returning slowly to their place, leaving her susceptible to mental attacks. I bet this is how Charles supports his students and encourages them to attend his school. I spotted Jean's mental projection on the ground a little further away. She was visibly upset, crying in pain as I noticed several broken bones and bruises on her body. I'm really happy that I have immunity from mental attacks thanks to my wish. I started to feel someone else's presence, Charles. I went over to where he was and caught him altering Jean's memories. I was really angry with him. I lunged at him and basically knocked him out of her mindscape. I started telling Jean about what I observed regarding his actions, using the power of mental communication. It's really cool, but I'll explain later. I was outside of her mindscape but still connected enough to inform her about my actions in the attacker. While I'm not strong enough to keep Charles out of her mind, I could shield her with my powers using a metal shield.
It was a great chance to observe if it were possible to share my mental shield with others. She could try to replicate it, but this would require more research.
I took some metal pieces and shaped them into a helmet resembling Magneto's to safeguard her mind. Although it slightly weakened the shield I had in place, the alert system to notify me remained functional once I placed it on her. Magneto supposedly uses the metal around him at a molecular level to boost its strength, which I personally find to be complete nonsense from a scientific standpoint. I turned around to see Charles rubbing his head in pain after our little altercation. I scooped up Jean in a bridal-style carry and was about to leave when... "Hold on, I need to assist her in managing her abilities," Charles stated. "You've done a lot of harm to her by invading her thoughts and memories for more than just a few hours." Then I started altering some of her joyful memories, turning them into negative ones, I mentioned. We glanced at the Ancient One, who nodded and opened a portal to Kamar Taj. We started walking towards it. After that, Logan and Storm started expressing their thoughts to Charles. I grinned at that. Kamar Taj, it was spotless. I couldn't spot any dust particles in the air. Jean won't be hurt by Charles here. He won't be able to bypass the protections, the Ancient One assured. I mentioned seeing a fire chicken in her mind. Any idea what that is? I asked, pretending to have seen the Phoenix Force to learn more about cosmic entities in Marvel. I was familiar with them from the comics, but encountering them in the real world was a whole different experience. She appeared confused at first, then a look of understanding crossed her face. That was likely a glimpse of the Phoenix, so it's time to start your training. Just keep in mind that I'll be quite busy at times, and learning magic requires a lot of self-study, she mentioned. I nodded in understanding, knowing this wouldn't be a walk in the park. As I hold Jean in my arms, her head resting on my chest, the Ancient One approached a sorcerer who accidentally blew up his room. Fast forward 3 weeks. The Ancient One mentioned that she would keep an eye on Jean while she remained unconscious. I went to school but didn't really meet anyone significant. Black Widow kept informing S.H.I.E.L.D. about both Peter Parker and me. I got the impression that they were aware of Peter's identity as Spider-Man and were interested in recruiting him for that. Meanwhile, Natasha closely observed me and found that my intellect was on par with Tony Stark's. I sort of found a way to be clever, but everyone has their own methods. They wanted to recruit me to their science department, but that's unlikely to happen. Mastering magic was quite challenging, especially for me. One reason I'm not human is because all the magic at Kamar Taj is intended for humans. I've even learned to charge my spells with energy from other dimensions. However, when there is an entity inside, they all required my absolute loyalty in exchange for allowing me to draw energy from their dimensions smoothly. Well, that didn't go as planned. I can only tap into the most fundamental dimensions. I can only create complex spells after collecting dimensional energy from weak dimensions, but it takes too long for the spell to be useful. I needed to become more powerful, but this is just the start. The Ancient One discovered that I possess my own magic. My kryptonian magic core. If I'm not careful, someone could start drawing out the magic in it, similar to how they manipulate dimensions. Using my adaptation to draw from my solar reserves allowed them to power up their own spells. Luckily, I could absorb the energy since it was mine, but it would be very dangerous against anyone else. It suddenly hit me that I actually have my own dimension at the fortress. The Phantom Zone. I hope Eder doesn't exist or is loyal to me because of my wish. I headed over to the fortress, chilling at the Fortress of Solitude. Right after I popped in through the portal, I was faced with the defenses I had put in place. Fortunately, it recognized my biosignature. Before using the Phantom Zone projector, I made sure to check if there were any prisoners inside. Thankfully, nobody was inside, and hopefully Ether wasn't either. I used it and started drawing energy from it, and it worked. I Van L declare this dimension my property and mine alone to the one above all, I chanted out. I felt a connection with something. The portal was steady as I walked through it, giving me a sense of comfort. I could see into the distance and was amazed to discover that the dimension seemed to be in tune with my thoughts. I sensed a strong connection that provided me with valuable insights on how to utilize it. One key revelation was the ability to send items to this place and retrieve them back on Earth, and vice versa. I focused on creating a portal to Earth and it was successful. It adopted some of my personal traits, like my ability to adapt, making it very versatile with any energy source. I attempted to send the kinetic energy, and it just about worked. I expected the Speed Force to be a knockoff, but I was surprised by how much of a knockoff it was. After running for a few hours and focusing on channeling energy, I could only manage short bursts of speed. After the burst ran out, I had to send more energy inside the zone to help it build up again. Although I was let down, I was grateful to have my own storage area. I've been deceived, betrayed, and possibly misled. I couldn't send any physical items to be transformed into intangible objects. I attempted to adjust the dimension, but I was unsuccessful. So, I won't be able to retrieve them. That's just how it goes in the zone. I believe that being the owner of the zone is why I was able to keep my body and clothes. Looks like I need to dive deeper into space law to create my own pocket dimension. One positive aspect is that I can now practice magic without any interference from cosmic entities. I came across a question that caught me off guard about kryptonian biology. Our bodies generate their own energy from sunlight. Sun energy is not necessary, as demonstrated by Superboy Prime absorbing Green Lantern energy and the effects of different types of energy like red sun energy. It was disappointing to realize that I couldn't simply go to a blue sun, send it into the Phantom Zone, and immediately get the energy. I would have to be in its rays to be affected by it. What made me happy was being able to send a blue sun in there and simply entering the dimension instead of having to travel billions of miles every time for a dip in a blue sun, but I'd need to make sure I don't die from it first. I was concerned about someone noticing a new dimension appearing, but it turns out no one paid any attention to it. The Ancient One asked me some questions about the dimension I connected to. I informed her that it was my own personal dimension and that I could allow her to draw energy from it. She allows the dimension to absorb the extra kinetic energy she generates while moving. She seemed intrigued by the exchange, so I explained that I was adjusting my dimension to better fit my needs. Eventually, I found myself floating higher than some satellites, soaking up extra solar energy to boost my power. I decided to test my strength and discovered it was only about 6,000 tons. I recalled the spar I had with the Ancient One. If Thanos showed up tomorrow for the Time Stone, she would definitely give him a beating that would make his mother jealous. She boosted her strength using magic to equal mine. That definitely confirmed it for me. Magic is nonsense. Now, you may be wondering why I allowed Charles to survive. There is a straightforward reason, Cerebro. He is able to enhance his telepathic abilities to an extraordinary extent, allowing him to locate almost anyone on the planet. If I had access to that technology, it could potentially enhance my telekinesis and other mental abilities, allowing me to expand their range and strength. While I was enjoying a refreshing shower in my luxurious penthouse, I suddenly sensed the tremors of an earthquake. I finished my shower and got dressed in my suit. I was well aware of the intense battle unfolding between Hulk and Abomination. I swiftly ascended and surveyed the entire city to assess the nighttime damage. This was going to be ideal for utilizing my adaptation to its fullest, although I am feeling apprehensive. Even while in flight, I observed buildings trembling in the vicinity of the conflict, and the situation was deteriorating. I noticed some buildings starting to develop cracks. I need to assist in swiftly removing the Abomination. I observed the scene from above, witnessing the intense confrontation between the Hulk and Abomination. I skillfully intercepted him midair and successfully propelled him away. I observed Hulk's injuries, noting the multiple broken bones and his eyes that were swollen shut. I observed his veins and noticed his body actively combating something. His alleged remedy was diminishing his abilities, yet I could observe it gradually dissipating from his system. The creature returned with a powerful roar. If you're looking for a challenge, I'm ready. I effortlessly blocked his punch with my palm. I had a greater level of strength compared to him. I am grateful that my encounters with Ancient One have yielded positive results. I have developed a greater ability to control my strength with increased precision. I shifted his arm aside and delivered a forceful blow to his chest. We both took a step back, engaging in a physical altercation. His blows had little impact on me, but the moment I had that realization, my resilience took over. His attacks seemed to be losing their strength, perhaps due to my increasing resilience. I made the decision to eliminate him, considering the extensive damage he had already caused to the city. It was clear that he posed a significant threat and could not be safely detained by S.H.I.E.L.D., Hydra, who always proved to be quite troublesome in the comics. I firmly grasped his arm and effortlessly propelled him into the sky. Once, he was soaring high in the sky. I pursued him relentlessly, forcefully colliding with his body. I maintained a spherical form, continuously delivering powerful punches. Releasing a fraction of my strength, my fist propelled through the air with incredible speed, causing visible disturbances. Striking him forcefully, he was sent crashing into the ground. Seizing the opportunity, I swiftly descended and delivered a devastating blow to his chest, causing it to collapse. The sound and sight of bones shattering and piercing his internal organs were unmistakable. He ceased to breathe. I noticed several footsteps approaching me. I turned and noticed the Hulk, who appeared to be almost fully recovered. It was clear that he was on guard, perhaps anticipating that I might make a move against him. The individual I presumed to be Betty appeared quite attractive, yet before I could fully observe her, the Hulk emitted a growl and swiftly positioned his arm in front of her, assuming a protective stance. Then I noticed an older gentleman approaching me with a calculating expression. I sensed his intentions, realizing that he intended to have me apprehended and studied in order to unravel the mysteries of my abilities. I disregarded him and began conversing with Hulk. "You can rest assured, I am not here to engage in any conflict." As I informed him, I noticed a visible sense of relief wash over him. He began to speak, but our conversation was abruptly interrupted by the sudden interjection of an elderly man's voice. "You were being apprehended for the alleged homicide of a United States soldier and the extensive damage caused to this city," Ross interjected, abruptly halting our conversation. I gave him a brief look and noticed his intense desire, prompting me to dismiss him with a gesture of annoyance. I noticed several reporters arriving and came up with a plan to deal with this individual. "It's actually you who should be held accountable for this person's rise to power. You provided him with a flawed sample of the super soldier serum, which was mixed with his own blood." I gestured towards Hulk. "You even traveled to a country where you had no jurisdiction to disrupt their peaceful existence because you desired to create more individuals like him, but ones who were easily manipulated," I continued, causing him to glance nervously at the reporters. "You would have caused a major conflict due to your actions, and the consequences of this soldier's actions resulted in significant damage to this area of New York," I concluded, calmly disposing of Abomination's body by launching it into the sky and swiftly following it, utilizing my heat vision to reduce it to ash. Then, they carefully extinguished the remaining puddle of blood on the ground. I could sense the animosity in Ross's gaze, and then I shifted my attention to Hulk. "It would be advisable for you to depart. I believe he gathered all his contacts in New York," I mentioned, and he swiftly glanced at Betty before acknowledging me. Then, he leapt onto a building and started to depart. I began to take flight upon hearing a man's desperate plea for assistance in safeguarding his loved ones. I proceeded to the location where I heard the sound. I witnessed a man embracing a woman, presumably his spouse, while a baby lay trapped amidst the debris. I swiftly started gathering the debris with caution, assisting him in safely escorting his wife and child away. When they looked to express their gratitude, I soared through the air. I have been contemplating the purpose of my existence and the pursuit of personal growth. Then I stumbled upon it, yearning for liberation from any form of control. I was determined to defy destiny and embrace true freedom, all while enjoying the journey. Although I may not possess the extraordinary abilities of a true superhero, I am always willing to lend a hand whenever possible. That is an admirable goal to have, I said to myself, with a slight chuckle. 2 days later, I was informed by a highly experienced individual that Jean is going to awaken. While observing the news, I learned that Theodore Ross has been dismissed from the military due to the discovery of evidence that substantiates my previous statements. The US government was compelled to transfer him to the Brazilian government after discovering individuals from Brazil who had been forcibly removed from their homes and brought to a clandestine facility within US borders for experimental purposes. I launched my own portal, which proved to be more user-friendly compared to harnessing the mysterious energy associated with the Vishanti. When I tried using it, I sensed a strong desire for me to be bound to their service indefinitely, not just as a mere servant but as a lifelong companion. As I entered the portal, I was greeted by Jean, who was visibly surprised and had just opened another portal. "You're just like me," she said with a hopeful and excited tone. "No, I am not a metahuman," I stated. "Metahuman?" she asked, seeking clarification. That's what mutants will be referred to as, I informed her, and she acknowledged with a nod. But, you intervened in my thoughts and prevented that despicable individual from enslaving me, she said with intense disdain while referring to Charles. I had to take a moment to process and fully understand that. Excuse me, I said, my voice filled with surprise and concern. When he entered my mind, I discovered that he was concealing certain things to an astonishing extent. I am aware that he runs a school where individuals like us can learn to harness our abilities and present ourselves as compassionate individuals dedicated to assisting others, she said, taking a deep breath to compose herself after witnessing something distressing. Despite his physical limitations, he is able to utilize his inner strength and abilities. She continued, I am confident you noticed the woman who was with them. He has utilized her for entertainment on numerous occasions, and at times, he would observe as he manipulated the minds of several of her students, using her as a sex slave. Afterwards, he would erase their memories, but for her, he essentially rewrote her mind. She spoke with intense animosity in her gaze. I observed the Ancient One carefully articulating her thoughts and glancing at me to gauge my response. When she noticed my eyes starting to turn red from my heat vision, she gently placed her hand on my shoulder to help me regain my composure. I started to refocus on Jean once more. After he was done using her, the bald individual proceeded to manipulate her mind, creating a separate personality that would obediently fulfill his every whim, engaging in sexual encounters with him or anyone he pleased, purely for his entertainment. When I discovered his true intentions, he attempted to erase every aspect of my identity, leaving me feeling violated and repulsed, she recounted, tears streaming down her face and a look of utter disgust etched on her features. I absorbed all of this information. It would clarify why Emma Frost had a strong dislike for Charles. However, what did he attempt to do to you? I asked her, my voice tinged with frustration. He attempted to manipulate me into believing that my parents held animosity towards me during my childhood. He claimed to have entered my life during that period and offered his support, insinuating that as time passed, I would develop romantic feelings for him and eventually become his spouse and subordinate, she expressed with a strong sense of revulsion towards Charles. Charles Xavier possessed an exceptional level of mastery over mind control. Even based on my knowledge from the fortress, engaging in such an activity was deemed perilous and highly risky. Not even the lowest individuals on Krypton would dare to take such a dangerous gamble with their lives. When someone successfully influences another person's perspective, it can result in the loss or alteration of a certain aspect of their identity. However, based on her account, it appears that he has managed to circumvent all obstacles and proceed with it regardless. Perhaps it is because the laws of the Marvel world differ from those found in DC. I am determined to confront him, I declared with a resolute tone, making it clear that no one would be able to hinder me. The Ancient One acknowledged me with a nod, and I gestured for her to come with me. We entered a vacant room. Why did you advise me to spare the one in control? I asked, as this question had been lingering in my mind for quite some time. In a few years, the Celestials will stumble upon the body of the Celestial known as Progenitor. Their return to Earth will be met with anger as they believe we have caused the demise of one of their own. This will result in a disturbance of Earth's core rotation, throwing our planet out of alignment. It is crucial that we keep Progenitor alive until then, she concluded, extending a cup of tea, which I politely declined. I am looking for a suitable location to ensure the safety of the mutants. However, I must carefully consider this situation. It is crucial to find a secure place for them, as the longer I delay, the greater the risk they face. If someone like Stryker discovers their presence, they will be captured. I have the option of locating Magneto or Emma Frost, and either of them may be willing to accept the mutants. Emma Frost has ties to the Hellfire Club, which somewhat complicates matters, but she genuinely cares for her students. Hopefully, she does. Magneto has a deep connection for mutants, but maybe we could also find common ground. In addition, Magneto strongly despised Nazis, from whom Hydra originated. This information could prove to be highly valuable for the agreement. However, Emma's expertise lies in the field of memory restoration, which could potentially provide solace to individuals who have experienced trauma by uncovering the truth. I recall a child mutant in the second X-Men movie with Hugh Jackman who possessed the unique ability of not requiring sleep. I was well prepared. Fast forward 2 days. It took more time than anticipated to gather evidence and locate both individuals. Fortunately, the fortress successfully identified their location using the internet. Despite the sophistication of their programs, they were no match for the powerful computer at the fortress. I was able to reach out to both of them and arrange a meeting for today. Jean spent several days under the guidance of the Ancient One, honing her abilities to harness the power of Phoenix Fire. She has a growing connection to the Phoenix Force. I made occasional appearances as well. I was making progress, but my work was hindered even further as beings from other dimensions demanded my assistance in order to harness their energy. I was studying enchantments, nothing too complex, just the basics. For instance, enhancing their durability, preventing rust, and improving sharpness brings to mind the Minecraft version. According to the Ancients' advice, using high-quality metal as a conductor, such as gold, would yield superior results. I crafted a sword of exceptional quality, which had a rather unattractive appearance, yet it demonstrated remarkable durability by slicing through 10 feet of solid stone before eventually succumbing. It was both amazing and heartbreaking, considering it was the most extraordinary conductive metal on Earth. I recognized that Uru would surpass gold in quality. It's quite fascinating how it shares several resemblances with the metal that Superman occasionally utilizes. It is commonly known as supermanium, derived from the metal of a dwarf star, which I am certain exists. However, we will discuss that in more detail at a later time. I noticed both Magneto and Emma coming towards me. "Hello, we have a lot to discuss about a certain individual," I said firmly, my voice filled with disdain. It was clear that I meant business, and Eric seemed puzzled, having only come to save over 150 mutants. Emma, too, looked stunning in her attire, with a corset that accentuated her remarkable figure. And her posterior appeared heavenly. I could clearly perceive it while I was facing her. "He has been engaging in unethical behavior towards the mutants in his school," I said. Emma's jaw dropped in shock, while Eric appeared visibly angry at the allegations I made against his former friend. "I am confident that he would not engage in such behavior. I may strongly dislike him, but he would never stoop so low as to harm his friends and students," Emma said with a tone of disbelief and anger. I understood that convincing them would be a challenge, which is why it took considerable effort to schedule this meeting. I wanted to provide concrete evidence to support my claims, so I demonstrated the recording of his actions. They both appeared extremely embarrassed, and I could hear Eric's heart racing as if he had experienced a cardiac event. Emma, despite her initial embarrassment, continued to observe Charles with disdain as he carried out his actions towards his people. Once it was over, Emma glanced in my direction while Eric kept his gaze fixed on the ground. I could see tears streaming down his face, even through his helmet. "I require both of you to ensure the safety of the students. If I were to take them, they would be at a higher risk than mere humans," I stated. "I have a solution to address the damage caused by Charles, but it will require both of you to collaborate," I concluded. Eric glanced at me briefly, then shifted his gaze to Emma. "I am here to assist you. I don't know what has become of my former friend anymore," he said in a somber and accepting tone. "I will assist as well," Emma said with disdain as she glanced at the screen displaying the evidence I presented. "All right, how quickly can everyone be prepared?" I inquired. "I already am. When you told me about over 150 mutants being used like this, I gathered everyone I had," Eric said with a determined yet sad voice. "Give me a few hours," Emma said in an irritated tone. "She appears attractive when she is angry," I thought to myself. After a span of 4 hours, we find ourselves at the X-Men mansion. I patiently waited for their preparation, providing them with guidance on more convenient ways to access and retrieve the items. Additionally, I developed a gas that would disperse throughout the entire mansion, gently incapacitating everyone inside, allowing for their safe extraction. I informed both Magneto and Emma that I was about to commence. I went over to the air vents and opened them. Shortly after, the students came into view. As I descended to the ground, I transmitted a message to them. Then, I sensed a powerful surge of psychic energy impacting my defenses. I observed the underground tunnels of their base. At last, I caught a glimpse of Cerebro with Charles inside. "So, that's how he accomplished it," I murmured to myself. "He utilized it to enhance his abilities beyond his current capacity, which empowered him to accomplish all the tasks he performed." I soared through the air, descending gracefully towards the location of Cerebro. Upon entering, I observed a slight reduction in the mental strain. I was in close proximity to Charles and engaged in a mental confrontation. Interesting fact. While I was in the midst of my attack, I didn't need to worry about defending him since my immunity took care of that. In addition, I have implemented several safeguards, such as constructing a wooden fence around your property. As I honed my skills, I drew inspiration from my resilience against metal attacks to create a strong defense. Some might consider it excessive, but I believe it's a necessary measure. It's like my inner Batman shining through. As we engaged in a mental battle, I persisted in my efforts to overcome his defenses. With each attempt, I honed my strategies and adapted to his tactics, determined to emerge victorious. Then, after a few minutes, I gained access to his thoughts. It was severely damaged beyond imagination. He consistently avoided recalling any memories from his past life, particularly when it came to Logan. Eventually, he grew weary of the task and harnessed his expertise to implant specialized programs in his mind, enabling automatic execution. Just like what happened to Bucky Barnes when Hydra did the same to him. Aurora, she was a woman who had experienced challenges. Whenever Charles required funding for his endeavors, he would employ the PIM particle on a gold ingot, selling the expanded result. Alternatively, he would loan out Aurora to various individuals in order to generate income. He even utilized some of his students for it. He treated both men and women equally, without any regard for their age. He influenced his brother Marco Kane to embrace a darker path by offering suggestions based on his perception of his brother's inner darkness. Finally, he relented. Prior to his actions, he confronted Charles after discovering that Charles was engaging in manipulative behavior with women, and Marco attempted to intervene. Despite not possessing the Crimson Gem, he came remarkably close to succeeding, even managing to resist Charles's mind control, enhanced with Cerebro, through sheer willpower. He narrowly survived the ordeal and eventually came back, passionately declaring his newfound ability to thwart his adversary. However, Magneto played a crucial role in confining him within the mountain range in California. However, prior to doing so, Charles requested that he make an effort to communicate with his brother. Eric then proceeded to remove Marco's helmet, despite his attempts to persuade him about Charles's actions. Marco's memories underwent a thorough transformation, even granting him a glimpse of the agreement he struck with Sidorak. It seems that he is quite relaxed, and upon discovering Marco's first-hand recollections of Charles's actions, he chose him to be his champion in order to put an end to his brother's deeds. I will gather more information about him at a later time. Then Charles proceeded to engage his mind with all of his resources, including a portable Cerebro conveniently located under his chair. I efficiently reviewed the memories and discovered that he cunningly manipulated Tony Stark into creating it, and I managed to obtain the blueprints. He started targeting mutants with telepathic abilities and eliminating them, resulting in a significant decrease in their population. Currently, there are only a limited number of these mutants left, with approximately 60 individuals remaining. Upon arriving at the mansion, he encountered Emma Frost and effortlessly dominated her thoughts, subjecting her to both physical and mental torment for a duration of 2 days, before erasing the entire incident from her memory. I have a theory that memories are stored in a person's DNA, similar to the concept in Assassin's Creed. It seems that she subconsciously recalls these memories, which could explain why she harbors such strong negative feelings towards him. When both Emma and Eric entered through the opening I created, with Emma positioned on a metal plate, I observed Emma's actions with sympathy as she delved into his thoughts. Shortly after, she let out a loud scream and swiftly lunged at Charles, striking him in her diamond form and delivering a forceful blow to his sensitive area. I swiftly moved forward and firmly grasped her arms to restrain her, prompting her to burst into tears. I held her tightly as she cried uncontrollably. "Please remove your helmet to fully appreciate Charles's accomplishments," I politely requested. "I assure you, I will not betray your trust. I insist on reviewing his complete body of work," I continued. He carefully considered his options before removing his helmet with deliberate precision. I conveyed all the information I could to him, and he acknowledged it silently. I reviewed all the material I had previously covered with him. We started with his involvement in Charles's manipulation, and it's worth noting that everything Eric did was influenced by his actions towards Aurora. He implanted programs in his mind, completely unbeknownst to him, that resulted in him harboring a deep disdain for all of humanity, rather than solely directing his animosity towards the Nazis and, by extension, Hydra. Charles removed Wanda, Pietro, and even his wife from his thoughts upon discovering the truth. Eric started pleading to be released as tears streamed down his face. I witnessed the moment when he dropped to his knees on the platform where Cerebro was located. I glanced at Charles once more and couldn't help but question why Raven Darkholme was among the other mutants gathered with Eric. I efficiently looked at his memories of her and ultimately determined her whereabouts. She was in the mansion, hidden behind a discreet door in his private room. He had apprehended her several months ago. When he last saw her, it was evident that she was in a weakened state and connected to medical equipment, following his exploitation of her and allowing others to do the same for financial gain. He had lead panels around the room she was in and soundproof walls. I efficiently put Charles to sleep and swiftly made my way to his room, skillfully navigating through the floor without disturbing his slumber. I entered the room cautiously but with a sense of urgency. I efficiently freed her from the restraints and safely removed her from the machine. I swiftly removed my cape and gently enveloped her in its warmth. She appeared frightened, yet found solace in my actions. I will ensure your comfort and safety as I guide you into a peaceful slumber, I reassured her, gently lulling her to sleep. She nodded slowly as she drifted off to sleep. I was considering taking action against Charles. I would like to discuss this matter with the Ancient One. How could you possibly be unaware? I raised my voice at the Ancient One. I didn't prioritize the concerns of the mutants. She responded back cautiously after witnessing me break a wall. Did you consider exploring individuals who have the ability to alter reality? I inquired, expressing surprise. She appeared somewhat embarrassed and filled with guilt over what she witnessed in his memories. I had brought the majority of the students to the fortress's medical bay for examination by the medical droids to check for viruses. Additionally, the building droids were there to expand the infirmary. However, I was particularly intrigued by how the Ancient One overlooked something of this nature. There are certain aspects of Charles's memory that were quite nauseating. I informed Jean about our findings, and she appeared both shocked and appreciative. Embarrassed by my previous words and thankful that I prevented her from experiencing that outcome. The Ancient One regarded me with a sense of regret and responsibility for failing to monitor the metahumans. Charles was unable to conceal the extent of his actions, as the Ancient One and I joined forces against him. He manipulated the parents of certain mutants to develop animosity towards their own children, in order to gain their admiration and carry out his nefarious actions. I was planning to harm him after subjecting him to some distress. However, I was planning on having assistance. Logan, I assisted him in capturing as many memories of his life as possible. Then I thoroughly explained and demonstrated the actions that Charles compelled him to take against Aurora and his students. Engaged in a highly unfortunate incident involving his own manhood, twice. He pleaded with me for the opportunity to view them. I assured him that they were being carefully monitored in a secure location to check for any potential illnesses. He appeared deeply distressed and let out a series of loud screams for several hours. Aurora was still in tears, and the Ancient One reversed time for her physical form while leaving her mind unaffected due to an incorrect stone. Evidently, she would have to utilize it worldwide to undo her memories, and releasing such immense power would have dire consequences for everyone involved. She had numerous diseases, including AIDS, gonorrhea, and chlamydia, among others. I'm confident that some of the students may also have some, but fortunately, the fortress, with its cutting-edge technology, was able to develop pills that could effectively cure them whenever a virus was detected. However, a few individuals had an excessive amount, prompting the Ancient One to propose reversing time for them, a suggestion that was met with unanimous agreement. We started erasing the memories of children, ensuring that they wouldn't recall their experiences and allowing them to rest peacefully. We did not cause harm to them. Ensure they are properly sedated. Emma believed she was inexperienced and believed that she may have lost her hymen during training. Now she knows what happened, and she did something that made me uneasy. She contacted Celine Gall, the Black Queen of Hellfire. I didn't have the opportunity to meet her in person or witness her discussion about the events involving the Ancient One during a sorcerer truce. Afterward, she departed. I didn't have the chance to meet her. They are created when two sorcerers require a meeting place that is impartial. No one could engage in combat or be engaged in combat by anyone else, as this truce was strictly enforced by the Living Tribunal. Now, other entities could be called upon to enforce it, but there can be consequences, like the truce being dissolved instantly for a surprise attack. However, the tribunal was known for its fairness and neutrality. However, if someone violates the truce and initiates an attack, they are immediately subdued and compelled to comply with the terms of the truce. This is a highly potent and risky. I had my arms tightly embracing Raven Darkholme, reveling in her restored and captivating beauty. She experienced post-traumatic stress disorder. I couldn't erase her memories at all as Charles, the individual in question, essentially duplicated and inserted the memories of every encounter into her mind, including the most recent ones. Reflecting on an event from 3 years ago, her mind would enter a state of deep contemplation, reliving the impact of Charles's actions for months on end. These memories would surface unexpectedly, bringing her back to her past. He performed this task countless times, utilizing both the room-sized Cerebro and the portable version in his wheelchair. Unfortunately, Emma caused him harm by breaking his legs and damaging the device on his back. Charles found himself in the mirror dimension, under the watchful eyes of several sorcerers, including Mordo. Despite only having trained in the mystic arts for a few months, he displayed impressive skill, managing to hold his own against the Ancient One for a brief period of time. I provided Charles with something exceptional. Has anyone seen Kung Fu Panda? Remember the formidable villain, Tai Lung? Naruto created a device for himself, utilizing the advanced technology at the fortress. This device was seamlessly integrated with his body, rendering him immobile. It would periodically puncture him from within every 10 seconds, only to heal him immediately afterwards. I ensured that I administered an IV to assist in maintaining his vital signs. It also passed over his crotch, delicately attending to his well-being, providing healing and relief. The most appealing aspect is that the nerves would be as delicate as a newborn. It was quite painful. In a more serious context, a demon who is an ally of Kamar Taj requested to borrow the idea. He approached me with great politeness, and I saw no reason to decline, so I agreed. Raven let out a piercing scream as she emerged from her trance. I attempted to assist her, but the memories inexplicably resurfaced when I removed them. Despite my efforts to remove them, they persistently returned. The Ancient One was completely unaware of the absence of any form of dimensional energy. Even Charles himself was unable to comprehend how it had happened. To my dismay, he even had the audacity to smile when I asked him to repair Raven's mind. I forcefully removed his eye and attempted to extract the information, but he was genuinely unaware of how to provide it. Eric was taking care of the children, allowing him to get some much-needed rest. I continued my education to ensure a smooth path ahead. I haven't come across any other X-Men that I'm familiar with, not even Cyclops. It's fortunate that they didn't have to experience that. Those who were able to do so could start the healing and recovery process, but only time would reveal the outcome. I'm unsure about how to handle this situation, I said to both Emma and Eric. You are the only one who has someplace safe, Emma replied, her voice trembling at the end. The Ancient One reverted her body to a time prior to Charles's arrival. I agree that you possess the necessary expertise and resources to provide care for those affected, Eric remarked. They were attempting to persuade me to allow individuals impacted by the unpleasant person to reside in the fortress. Listen, I have a significant number of adversaries that would bring tears to your eyes, I informed them with utmost seriousness. I also conducted an unusual experiment that often results in them exploding in my face. You don't need to worry about them for long. I feel responsible for not giving Charles the attention he deserved. Once they have physically healed, you can take them to Island M where they can find solace and recover from this ordeal, Eric said with a hint of sadness. You will utilize them to harm humanity at the earliest opportunity, remarked Emma. We both understood that she was grasping for solutions without a solid foundation. It was discovered that Charles instilled a deep disdain for all of humanity within him. I will ensure their well-being, providing healing and arranging for their relocation to Island M. Additionally, I will communicate with their families, informing them of the situation and, if needed, assisting in the restoration of their memories, I firmly stated, leaving no room for further debate. Eric nodded, provided me with the coordinates, and proceeded to create space to accommodate the victims. Emma lingered, gazing in my direction. I rose to my feet, ready to embark on the search for their loved ones. Emma paused and planted a gentle kiss on my cheek. I was taken aback and needed a moment to process, but she then withdrew and gave me a playful wink. I could sense the anguish reflected in her eyes as she witnessed her own struggles. 1 week later, I had just completed the relocation of the final metahumans from the fortress. I had created a portal to transport them to the island. Raven remained in the fortress. We had to ensure her sedation was maintained, as she had been experiencing episodes of waking up in distress and displaying aggressive behavior towards anyone who approached her, with the exception of Eric and myself. Logan has been frequenting bars in New York. Hank, Beast, was found in a comatose state in the infirmary, with significant mental damage. Aurora was determined to persevere, and she had a scheduled appointment with a therapist who specializes in working with metahumans in a few days. She has successfully overcome the challenges she faced. Eric was contemplating how to make a strong impression when reconnecting with them. I was contemplating the events surrounding Charles and trying to understand what had occurred. One possible theory is that in this real-world scenario, individuals are unrestrained by societal norms, allowing their dark desires to manifest freely. This leads me to consider a second theory, which suggests that I am currently immersed in dark multiverse. Now listen to me, they are formed when someone harbors a fear regarding certain aspects of themselves. What if I find myself in a situation where Charles is afraid of the potential harm he could cause to others with his power? It seems to have some logic behind it. After eliminating Charles, I experienced a sense of relief that I hadn't realized was weighing me down. I consulted various individuals, including strangers on the street, and they shared a similar experience, albeit limited to the specific date and time when they lost weight. So, it seems that the dark universe has managed to survive. I also came across a news report about the unusual phenomenon. Additionally, I caused Charles to experience excruciating pain by drawing inspiration from Darkseid's agony matrix, which involves directly stimulating the neural pain receptors. This experience activates all the pain receptors in your body. Picture a scenario where someone stimulates your senses, heightening your awareness without causing any harm or pain to your body. This is exactly what I accomplished with utmost dedication and focus. However, I caused such an overwhelming mental strain on him that his brain couldn't handle the intensity, resulting in his unfortunate demise. I also ensured his body was completely incinerated, and his soul was utilized to enhance a cleansing ritual in the restrooms of Kamar Taj. I found myself back in the fortress, which had expanded significantly to accommodate the victim's needs for movement and recovery. I also created a more compact PIM particle collector. I am holding two small vials in my hand. One is a vibrant shade of red, while the other boasts a striking blue hue. One item decreases in size, while the other has the ability to make things bigger. I tried two others, and once again, Hank Pym proves his brilliance. When something is enlarged, molecules from the surrounding area are added to make the object bigger, depending on the amount used. I haven't had the opportunity to test it on myself yet, as I've been focused on creating and designing a new suit that can harness the power of these particles. Now, I am determined to pursue Clow and retrieve the vibranium. I will only take 3 canisters worth based on what I saw in the movie. I will donate the rest to Wakanda as a gesture of goodwill, along with Clow, after rendering him incapacitated. I have a limited supply of vibranium. I would like to inquire about the process of acquiring and melting adamantium. I could create a solar forge since I also need to acquire some Uru. My enchantments have significantly improved since I bound the Phantom Zone to me. I created and utilized a sword made entirely of solid gold, which impressively endured the task of slicing through a staggering 10 tons of titanium before ultimately succumbing to its limits. I am now able to channel dimensional energy through items using my own dimension. I have developed my most impressive enchantment to date. Given the nature of the zone, I possess the ability to not only sever physical bodies but also souls within this ethereal realm. I am striving to enhance it by harnessing their life force and transforming it into energy to amplify the potency of the weapon I create. I have also attempted to recreate the captivating power possessed by Mjolnir, enabling Thor to summon it from any corner of the universe. However, it is still a project that is being developed, as whenever I summon it, it materializes as a blade in my hand. I once even placed it in a pommel. My next step involved reaching Nidavellir through the use of a magical portal. I wanted to acquire the necessary skills to become a proficient smith and gain access to Uru metal. I also aimed to thwart Thanos' acquisition of the gauntlet crafted by them. I recall the forge where Thor crafted Stormbreaker. Hopefully, it is of a high standard. It required some time and effort to locate Clow. Yes, I did. I found myself soaring high above the clouds, gazing down upon a majestic ship sailing near the African coast. It appears that he already possesses the vibranium, as I can observe it discreetly stored in his ship. The reason I am interested in vibranium is because of its incredible versatility. The MCU Vision possessed a remarkable composition of synthetic muscles and skin, enabling him to effectively harness the immense power of the Mind Stone, an infinity stone of great significance. I have a strategic approach to not taking all of the vibranium. I understand the importance of having allies. There are a significant number of adversaries to combat on my own. It's surprising how many main characters in reincarnation novels overlook the importance of equipment, even though they have the potential to become incredibly powerful. I don't want to depend on my ability to bounce back. Doomsday was eliminated and subsequently resurrected as a clone for a span of more than 3 decades. He was highly skilled at dealing with death, while I had no prior experience. I also have to consider the concept of death, as I have already experienced it once, but I was fortunate enough to be revived by a higher power. Considering the similarities between Lady Death and Necron, I cannot afford to take any chances with my life. Necron had the power to effortlessly bring anyone who died under his control, and I don't want to become a part of that. Considering the reasons behind my preference for Wakanda as an ally rather than an enemy, one cannot overlook the significance of Bast, the Panther Goddess. Although I may have the advantage in physical strength, she would undoubtedly defeat me with her magical abilities. So, let's avoid angering any other influential entities for now. It required some time and effort to locate Clow. Yes, I did. Naruto was soaring high above the clouds, gazing down at a ship near Africa. It appears that he already possesses the vibranium, as I can observe it discreetly stored in his ship. The reason I am interested in vibranium is because of its incredible versatility. Although I may acquire vibranium, I will still lack uru and adamantium. After spotting Clow on the deck, I promptly retreated indoors, prioritizing my safety. Utilizing my ability to read minds, I assessed individuals for any signs of wrongdoing. Fortunately, it appears that no one poses a threat worthy of elimination. They are simply bodyguards, and Clow is an exceptional boss. Despite his questionable actions towards others, he compensates his employees generously and provides them with health benefits. The ship where he stores his vibranium has gained quite a reputation, appearing to have African origins. It appears that he prefers individuals with a fresh start to minimize any suspicions on his vessel by using an alias, Clever. I successfully defeated them, including Clow. I will ensure that he remains sedated to prevent any disturbances. When I laid eyes on the vibranium, I felt a sense of satisfaction knowing that it would greatly benefit my upcoming projects. I captured Clow and promptly utilized my communicator to establish contact with the fortress, enabling me to teleport back without delay. Stronghold of Solitude. Upon arrival, I promptly placed Clow in a secure containment cell. I also brought the vibranium along. I was filled with anticipation, but I needed to determine the functionality of the PIM particles. Upon testing, it was observed that only the casing had expanded. I attempted another experiment with the vibranium, this time without the protective covering, and it had professional experience. I was pleased with its significant expansion, reaching 20 times its usual size. Oh, yeah, I thought to myself, infinite vibranium for the win. I had requested the fortress to analyze the vibranium, and it was discovered that the fortress could efficiently harness the power of the vibranium, although it would require some time to liquefy it. I successfully expanded another piece, which grew to 20 times its original size. I was wondering about the effectiveness of vibranium as a magic conductor. After applying my expertise, I was relieved to see that it worked. Although it falls slightly short of being as valuable as gold, it is still highly regarded. The fortress informed me that I could utilize certain resources to enhance my personal kryptonian skinsuit. The attire on Krypton was generally casual, with the cape being a matter of personal choice. Something I discovered about the skinsuit that further enhanced my appreciation for it is the ease with which the material can be reproduced on Earth. I realized that I could simply create a shopping list of the necessary items and utilize PIM particles to make more. The results were fantastic. One advantage is that it absorbs some of the excess energy emitted by my body's bioelectric aura, enhancing its strength and resilience, albeit to a limited extent. There is a limit to it. Just something I added on for fun. I was planning to combine the materials from the skinsuit and vibranium to observe the outcome. Hopefully, it won't abruptly halt my progress while in flight. That would be quite inconvenient. I also requested the fortress to craft a standard sword and knife for me, using vibranium. I had a thought that made me want to facepalm. I possessed the canisters of vibranium, which provided me with an endless supply of the valuable resource. It also functions with a fragment taken from the previously expanded vibranium. I could potentially provide Wakanda with both Clow and the metal, thereby gaining a valuable ally in the process. Then, it occurred to me. Eric Stevens. It's been a week since I began experimenting with vibranium, and most of my time has been spent waiting. I have a knife that is made of vibranium, and it is incredibly practical. I was able to cut myself after enchanting it, but it did require a significant amount of force. I was also strategizing how to approach Stevens. I am aware that he harbors strong negative feelings towards T'Chaka and, as a result, T'Challa. It became clear to me that Wakanda had been closely monitoring Ororo, despite her being revered as a deity by certain African tribes. Her lineage also contributes to their fascination with her. T'Challa, he has a deep affection for one of the Dora Milaje, although her name escapes me at the moment. It seems that T'Challa's father is opposed to him marrying one of them, despite their supposed superiority over other women from their home. They closely observed Ororo due to that. They should have been aware of the situation. I have two options. Should I assist Eric in becoming the ruler of Wakanda and manipulate him into being my pawn, all while he aids me in safeguarding the world? I can demonstrate the dangers that Earth is facing through an illusion or by projecting them into his mind. I could also attempt to bring them together and have faith that Eric will let go of his animosity. The issue lies with Wakanda itself. If he arrives, their trust in him will be diminished because of his prolonged absence from Wakanda. If Bast happens to appear, I will simply confine her to the Phantom Zone. If she attempts to transform into an immaterial form, I will have the means to eliminate her. However, I can also take control of her domains. I will let her keep her immortality, but her powers are tied to her domains, one of which is said to be linked to the sun. However, it may not be feasible at the moment to engage in any actions that could potentially lead to conflicts with deities. Displacing her from her domains would undoubtedly intensify the concerns and anxieties of the other gods. It's important to consider that if the first option does happen, there could potentially be a civil war in Wakanda. The second option has a higher likelihood of avoiding conflict. I will consider this once I determine the extent of Eric Stevens' disdain for the king. I am feeling overly optimistic, I muttered to myself. I patiently awaited the fortress to indicate the completion of the remaining items it was producing, high above the clouds, harnessing ample solar energy. I successfully ventured beyond the atmosphere without encountering any difficulties. However, I lacked the necessary expertise to navigate through space independently. Despite the fortress providing me with the information, I quickly realized that comparing it to this universe's data is futile. There are galaxies and stars that are either misplaced or completely absent. I was considering basking in the sun to embark on another journey to a serene destination and absorb its radiant energy. I attempted to create a solarium or replicate it, but I was unsuccessful in realizing Dr. Octavius's concept of constructing and stabilizing a sun. I could also utilize it to power the fortress, but upon further consideration, I became aware that if it were to implode, it could potentially result in a supernova. I have developed a solar energy solution inspired by the concept of solar panels depicted in comics. Although it is not as efficient as harnessing natural sunlight, it serves as a viable option for emergency situations. During testing, I conducted experiments while unclothed. I discovered that my reserves increase as I consume more energy. Consider a phone battery as my energy reserves that deplete when I am not exposed to sunlight. The panels recharge as if I were absorbing sunlight, but they don't expand it as much for some reason. I was also considering the possibility of meeting Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers, in the near future. I am confident that Fury reached out to her. A transmission was detected emanating from the helicarrier and heading out into space. The ship itself was easily identifiable due to its ability to displace clouds and reflect light when camouflaged. I had a multitude of tasks to accomplish in order to enhance my abilities. If I have the opportunity to meet her, I may need to confront her because I refuse to conform to societal expectations. I can take advantage of the opportunity to leverage my expertise. Given Doomsday's impressive ability to replicate and even create new powers to overcome his adversaries, he demonstrated this by countering Radiant. If I am able to acquire the necessary skills to effectively counter her, it is possible that I could neutralize the power of the Infinity Stones, particularly the Space Stone. Her origin aligns with her movie, but fortunately, it's not Brie Larson. Otherwise, I would strongly disagree with her and express my frustration due to the excessive political correctness that I had to endure. It was disheartening to see other characters being portrayed as weaker just to elevate her. Although it may appear to have a negative impact on certain plans, it will certainly provide me with a sense of personal satisfaction. After putting in a lot of effort and dedication, I finally saw the results of my training, even though it took longer than expected. I demonstrated exceptional precision with my heat vision, allowing me to target an individual's brain through their closed eyelids and even perform surgical procedures. I could see progress in my telekinesis training. Finally, I have achieved a level of mastery over molecules, although I still have some way to go before I can manipulate them as desired. I had achieved a strength of slightly over 88,000 tons. Not quite on the same level as Superman, but I possess enough power to take on some of the adversaries in the Marvel Universe. My freeze breath also improved, but it was challenging to practice when I released it. I even created a small iceberg in the equator. I was considering exploring additional enchantments. I was attempting to see if I could replicate a particular one from Devil Arms in Devil May Cry. They can become more powerful by absorbing the essences of those they defeat. Despite the initial perception of a heavy workload, it is actually quite manageable. Even if I were able to replicate that one, there is a possibility that it could develop sentience and pose a threat to me. I also wanted to ensure that if someone were to take it from me, anyone or anything they encountered would simply pass through them without causing harm, unless I grant permission. I noticed the signal emitted by the fortress and promptly headed over to collect my request. Additionally, I was curious to find out if the fortress had any valuable insights on the art of forging, which I could then assimilate into my knowledge. Upon my arrival at the fortress, I found that the items I had requested had been completed. I tried them out for a few hours before I was prepared to leave and pursue the champion of Juggernaut Sidorak. I observed the massive figure as it struggled to emerge from the earth. The figure gained increased velocity after I assisted in removing some of the dirt from him. Juggernaut, I was here seeking to establish a partnership and harness energy from the Crimson Dimension. I was also planning on using my adaptation to enhance my strength. Given my progress in a few weeks, it seems unlikely that anything other than seeking opponents off-world would be of much assistance in my adaptation. I suppose I could give the Sheer Empire a shot. I witnessed Juggernaut forcefully emerging from the ground. I went to greet him in a courteous manner. "Hi, I stated confidently as he launched a fist in my direction. "Well, I suppose I am engaging in combat," I muttered to myself, allowing his punch to make contact with me, propelling me backwards. I experienced intense physical discomfort throughout my body. 95 to 100 tons, seriously. I muttered to myself, questioning why his strength was able to affect me. I mean, I understand him being able to hold his own against the Hulk occasionally, but his strength seemed to surpass what was depicted in the comics. "I will put an end to Charles," he declared with determination. I could sense the strong determination in his eyes as my body struggled to adjust to the force of his blow. No pain, no gain, I thought to myself. I couldn't demonstrate to him the actions I took towards Charles due to his excessively large helmet. "I'll decline the offer if that's what it takes to obtain energy from the Crimson Dimension." He appeared to have acknowledged my comment and displayed signs of embarrassment. "Alright, perhaps deriving energy from that dimension isn't truly worthwhile," I admitted, feeling somewhat embarrassed by the compromise. Juggernaut let out a thunderous roar as he charged towards me. I was aware that confronting him directly was not a wise decision, yet I proceeded with it nonetheless. During our encounter, the force of the impact reverberated and created a powerful shockwave, causing me to be pushed backwards. He forcefully took hold of me and forcefully brought me down to the ground. He tried to stomp on me, but I swiftly flew a short distance and maneuvered behind him, attempting to remove his helmet. I brandished my expertly crafted vibranium knife, determined to remove his helmet. It appears to be a standard military knife, lacking any distinguishing features. While I took hold of his helmet and swiftly pierced it with my knife, he forcefully grasped my head and began to apply pressure. His palm is covering my right eye. I just used my heat vision with remarkable precision, severing the nerves in his hand. The result was immediate, as he screamed in agony and hastily withdrew his injured hand. I successfully tore the bottom right side of his helmet. I silently expressed frustration as his head remained protected, pondering the material of his helmet that proved impervious to my knife. While observing his hand emitting smoke, I quickly reached out and took hold of the fragment I had removed from him. Upon closer inspection, I discovered that it was a combination of steel and tungsten, which I effortlessly bent now that it was detached. Does the gem of Sidorak also enhance his armor or something? I pondered silently. I recognized its versatility, which could account for the durability of his clothing and its ability to withstand damage. He turned towards me, and his hand appeared to be fully healed. Upon further examination, it was evident that his body was not experiencing any signs of fatigue. This individual was greatly undervalued. I noticed significant changes in my body. I could sense a noticeable increase in my strength, and I am fortunate to have clear skies allowing me to bask in the warmth of the sun. I observed his chest, which appeared to radiate with energy. That is why he appears to be growing stronger, seemingly drawing even more energy from the Crimson Dimension, I murmured to myself. I noticed that it was embedded in his chest. I surveyed the surroundings and observed that the landscape was being severely damaged. It was inevitable that someone would take notice of this. I need to complete this task immediately, I told myself. I approached and started to oscillate, while he rushed towards me. Then I encountered him, and he proved to be unstoppable. After he started to charge, I managed to seize the gem from within him. I started to sense a strong force emanating from the gem in my hand, seemingly attempting to exert its influence over me. As I entered my mindscape, a striking crimson energy ball loomed before me, relentlessly attempting to breach the barriers of my consciousness. I ventured beyond the realm of the mindscape, seeking to harness energy to fuel my own existence and share it with my dimension. I started to exert my influence over the limited control I possessed over my adaptation, striving to maintain my physical form while simultaneously enhancing my strength. I observed the energy ball in my mindscape and noticed a sense of urgency as it gradually diminished in size. I observed a remarkable phenomenon as I stepped outside, a radiant aura enveloping my being, coinciding with a subtle increase in my height. I wasn't someone who was using steroids in a professional manner. I was also exerting effort to make the necessary changes to everything about it, as I had taken ownership of this responsibility. I didn't experience any visible physical changes, but I could sense a significant transformation occurring within my body. My magical core also appeared to be undergoing alterations, requiring me to cast energy waste spells to deplete it before it returned to its previous state. This cycle continued repeatedly. I felt a significant shift in growth within me. I examined the stone, and it appeared to darken as I absorbed its powers completely. I sensed a murmuring presence of discontent within my thoughts. I encountered a substantial entity within my thoughts, gradually diminishing in size. Upon observing the red skin, it became evident that I witnessed Sidorak's futile attempt to penetrate my formidable mental barrier, as he gradually diminished in size and strength. Then, it dawned on me. The gem is a part of him, and when I depleted its power, it seems that his connection to Earth must be diminishing. I murmured to myself softly. It appeared that he didn't hear me. He appeared determined to continue attacking my defenses, until I realized that he seemed incredibly desperate and on the verge of collapse. What is your intention behind attempting to invade my thoughts so persistently? I inquired of him in a confident and assertive manner. He turned around abruptly and, upon seeing me, charged towards me while screaming. "Return my authority," he shouts at me as he charges forward. I soar through the air with precision, swiftly bringing him down. "What is the reason for your presence in my mind?" I inquired as he appeared excessively eager. It could potentially be related to some otherworldly deity, but I can never be certain with this individual. I overheard him expressing his dissatisfaction quietly. "Please speak up," I requested him. "Where do I find the courage to do this?" I wondered. "I don't want to fade into obscurity," he exclaimed. "Could you please clarify?" I inquired, feeling perplexed. He became more composed once I ceased drawing energy from the gem, and I observed that its color was gradually returning. He proceeded to describe his journey from being a mere mortal to attaining godlike status, aligning with the concept of apotheosis in Marvel. However, some individuals insisted on sharing his power with them. Sidorak refused, fully aware of the human's intentions. The individual desired to eliminate him or seize his authority for personal gain. However, when he discovered the method by which Sidorak obtained his power, he speculated that by garnering worship, he could attain godhood, and similarly, by the same means, he could descend into demonhood. Regrettably, it was successful, resulting in Sidorak ascending to the status of a demon god. Agamotto encountered Sidorak after eliminating the human, and due to his altered appearance, Agamotto jumped to conclusions and attempted to banish him back to his origin. However, this plan failed because Sidorak was not yet linked to the Crimson Dimension, as he originally hailed from Earth. This incident occurred during Agamotto's rise to power. Agamotto then made an unsuccessful attempt to send him to Hell. He defeated Sidorak, causing his essence to be transported to the Crimson Dimension, where Sidorak transformed into a powerful mystical entity. Agamotto utilized the Time Stone to gain insight into his past actions, leading to a profound sense of remorse for Sidorak. In an act of compassion, Agamotto facilitated a means for Sidorak to establish a lasting connection with the Earth, ultimately assisting him in creating his gem. I couldn't determine the veracity of his words, but suddenly I sensed a presence outside. I promptly left him behind and discovered that it was the Ancient One, who delivered a message through a portal confirming his honesty. She appeared to be submerged, though. "I wonder why they are able to utilize spells fueled by my energy," Sidorak pondered, speaking through his gem after I had exited my mindscape. "That seems very logical, at least in this context," I said to myself. "If it is true, why is it that your avatar is always causing chaos?" "Well, not this one," I inquired of him. "Because everything they break sends a repaired copy back to my dimension, like what you call video games, although they seem to have stopped making violent ones," he stated. It's quite clear why his avatars are lacking in intelligence. Additionally, he appears to be quite relaxed. "You claimed the majority of the power in my gem, leaving me bewildered and overwhelmed," he confessed. "Apologies for the inconvenience. I thought you were someone who had ill intentions towards the Earth," I told him in a serious tone. "Is there any way for me to regain the power that was taken from me? Even though I can channel more energy into the gem to maintain a strong connection to Earth, it still troubles me," he inquired, despite my desire to retain the energy that did not belong to me. I started redirecting the energy back into the gem, experimenting with my energy manipulation technique. "Here is everything. It's interesting that you still possess it despite giving me slightly more than what you initially took," he remarked, sounding slightly taken aback. I found it equally surprising. Upon further reflection, I came to the realization that my adaptation has resulted in the incorporation of the energy component into my magic core. As a result, my core now possesses the ability to not only regenerate through exposure to sunlight, but also generate energy from the Crimson Dimension. Well, I have control over it now. It would be wise to maintain confidentiality, I cautioned Sidorak, fully aware that if any other entity were to discover this information, their attempts to exploit me would only intensify. I had mixed feelings about this development. I, Sidorak, master of the Crimson Dimension, solemnly swear on the living tribunal not to disclose the secrets of the master. He began taking an oath. Phantom Zone, I informed him. The abilities of the Phantom Zone dimension will remain undisclosed until he willingly shares them with me, free from any form of manipulation. After completing his oath, I immediately sensed a strong force exerting pressure on me, only to disappear moments later. I released a breath I wasn't aware I had been holding. I will return the gem to your champion, I informed Sidorak, hoping to establish an alliance through this situation. What happened to my avatar's brother, the villainous one? Sidorak asked me in a professional manner. Oh, boy, I sighed to myself. I will provide you with the copies of the memories detailing his actions and what transpired. Explaining it all would be time-consuming. Once you have viewed them, could you please convey to your avatar that his brother has been apprehended? I inquired, concluding our conversation. Very well, he stated professionally. While I was in the process of returning the gem to Marco, I made sure to transmit duplicate memories to the gem so that Sidorak could personally witness them. I invited Marco to accompany me to the fortress for a discussion at a later time. I had some new theories and powers to experiment with. I spent 2 days at the fortress, rigorously testing my new abilities. I experienced a significant improvement in my strength, durability, and other related aspects. When I create weapons using crimson energy, they possess exceptional sharpness and remarkable durability. I was particularly thrilled to have the opportunity to work with Uru. I successfully resolved a single issue and devised a solution to enhance my bootleg speed force. I felt a sense of professionalism as the crimson energy flowed through my body's core. After I had finished my meal, I would carefully dispatch it to the Phantom Zone using my own formidable strength. Although it may not be on the same level as more established options, it is still in its early stages. I considered the possibility of utilizing my personal core to generate speed force energy, so I began doing it. Alright, let's get started, I muttered to myself, as I focused on channeling the power within me. Next. I let out a loud scream as I experienced a tumultuous sensation within me, alternating between intense heat and freezing cold. I felt a strong urge to cry, but I managed to suppress it as I attempted to master my adaptation and harness the incredible speed force, just like the characters in the comics. When I sensed a hindrance in my progress, as if something crucial was absent, I felt compelled to express myself. Then a brilliant idea dawned on me, illuminating my mind. What is the solution to the equation 3/2, 9yz, 4a equals? I stated, and then abruptly, everything began to move at a sluggish pace. With a sudden burst of energy, my body was enveloped in a dazzling display of light and power, causing a magnificent explosion. I was on the verge of losing consciousness when I suddenly realized that anyone who made contact with the lightning would be able to harness its power. I started absorbing it to fully adapt and generate speed force energy within my core. I was highly dedicated to acquiring the abilities commonly associated with a DC speedster, and subsequently channeled the remaining energy from the time stone that I had been reserving in order to gain some level of control over time. I managed to internalize it, and I sensed a transformation taking place within my physical being and magical essence, before losing consciousness. The following day, time fast forwards, I woke up feeling the warmth of the sun enveloping me. I was feeling down, but my mood quickly improved as I gained more solar energy. I remembered what I was doing and decided to check up on Raven. It's good to see that she is making progress in recovering, although she still experiences nightmares. However, she still carries the burden of those memories from what Charles did to her. She would become unfocused, and then she would express her emotions through tears. She carries the memories not only in her mind, but also in her physical being. On the initial occurrence, she shed tears and huddled into a fetal position. I was completely clueless about how to assist her. I went as far as seeking guidance from the Ancient One, who kindly offered to turn back time for her. Regardless of any time manipulation, this event would still occur. She had a mental problem. I understood the necessity of utilizing the Mind Stone to assist her. She has been making efforts to exercise and regain her muscle strength, but occasionally experiences moments of mental blankness. She was in the midst of doing push-ups, perspiring profusely. She is attractive, but I will refrain from pursuing her given the challenges she is currently facing. Jean was deeply concerned about the situation involving Raven. She attempted to assist, but discovered that no matter what she did, she was unable to erase the memories from her mind. We were able to extract them using a crystal from the fortress. It's fascinating how her mind retains such vivid memories of what happened. I observed that she ceased her movement to engage in push-ups and started trembling. I witnessed tears cascading down to the earth. Then she sits down and starts to hunch over. I approach her and carefully transport her to the room I have prepared, designed specifically for her. She has experienced this situation multiple times, and in my absence, one of the droids in my possession escorts her to her room. I have also looked into Aurora's situation and she is currently attending therapy sessions. However, it is a time-consuming process, and she successfully persuaded me to assist her in uncovering any incriminating information about the politicians Charles provided for her amusement. I agreed and provided her with a comprehensive list of individuals that Charles had allegedly sold her to. Notably, Alexander Goodwin Pierce, Daniel Whitehall, and Hydra stood out among the rest. It is understandable why they would choose not to use S.H.I.E.L.D. to attack the mansion. This made me stop and think because it was incredibly logical. Hydra or S.H.I.E.L.D. may take advantage of this opportunity to capture and conduct experiments on the metahumans. Why am I even bothering with this nonsense? Then I recalled the challenges they experienced. Ah, the wonders of human intelligence, I muttered to myself. Raven had stopped crying and was peacefully sleeping. I carefully placed her on her bed and allowed her to rest. I decided to venture outside once again to further test my Speed Force capabilities, and it appeared that my core was completely charged. I observed the zone and noticed a scarcity of Speed Force energy. I went out and started channeling the Speed Force energy into it. My core was filling itself a bit slower, but that was likely attributed to the impressive size and strength of my core. Upon further examination, it became apparent that the rate at which it was filling had increased compared to when I would run. I started utilizing the Speed Force and gradually acclimated my body to its sensations before taking off at a rapid pace. I was moving at a rapid pace in a few instances. I reached the ocean and effortlessly glided across the water's surface. I already could, but everything appears to be running slower than before. I sprinted in a spontaneous direction, and it was absolutely thrilling. I recently started soaring upwards as my energy rapidly depleted, eventually reaching a height above a cluster of satellites. Yeah, Speed Force, I said with enthusiasm. Mastering the utilization of my abilities from the Speed Force came more naturally to me, given my pre-existing understanding of its potential. I had some limitations in terms of what I could accomplish, as I had a restricted amount available in my core. Fortunately, I was able to rely on my expertise to assist me when I ran low on it. I had the ability to generate lightning, but it took a toll on my energy reserves. I haven't attempted to travel back in time as it's highly probable that it will have negative consequences. Mastering Crimson Energy was a bit more intricate as it involved the deliberate distribution of the energy throughout my entire body for effective utilization. I am able to utilize both Crimson Energy and the Speed Force simultaneously, although it does deplete my core rapidly. I accidentally broke through a mountain while running without even realizing it. It seems that Earth is no longer a suitable location for honing my abilities. I have been utilizing my dimension to refine my abilities. I would require some time to become proficient in them. However, at the moment I must attend school. Fast forward to school. I was strolling towards school from my luxurious residence. I was just a few streets away from it. Upon my arrival, the scene lacked any remarkable qualities. Natasha continued to observe me closely, while Peter and Jean skillfully evaded her attention. She had us working on additional assignments made by S.H.I.E.L.D. I have been gradually experiencing a decline in my academic performance. They skillfully maneuvered up and down to create a more convincing illusion. I made a conscious effort to avoid attracting her attention, as she observed my every move. Finally, it came to an end as I made my departure. I overheard Natasha informing someone outside about my departure from the front exit. I then observed and witnessed several vehicles parking in front, and it became apparent that they were armed. I was unprepared for an encounter with S.H.I.E.L.D. when I spotted Coulson among them. I headed towards the rear exit and noticed Natasha standing by the door, accompanied by other students who were also leaving. I had a different perspective. I was simply planning to walk through it. In addition, I would like to clarify things with them. Excuse me, can I have a moment of your time? She spoke with a firm and commanding tone when she noticed me, and it's quite impressive how many weapons she has. I apologize, Ms. Rushman, but I regret to inform you that I will be running late today due to several prior commitments. Perhaps we can reschedule for another day, I conveyed to her in a tone that I deemed respectful. See you tomorrow, I said, walking past Ms. Rushman. She released me without much trouble after giving me a nod, although her reasons seemed clearly fabricated. I overheard her instructing someone to accompany me. I wondered, quickly glancing around and noticing him on a rooftop. I started walking, and then I started using my phone to track the number of steps I had taken to ensure the credibility of my story. Afterward, I transitioned into a jog. I sensed that if those two were present, there must be someone eagerly awaiting my return. I was passing by an alleyway and noticed someone on the other side of the walls. I made the choice to steer clear and continue on my way. This was going to be frustrating. I heard a sound resembling a wish and swiftly turned my gaze towards it, only to find it directed towards my neck. Upon closer examination, I noticed that it was a tranquilizer. I chose to go back to my previous role and made it appear as if I stumbled. A man lurking in the alley suddenly lunged towards me, trying to cover my mouth with a cloth that I suspected was laced with a sedative. I utilized my telekinetic abilities to cause him to stumble. It was quite amusing to witness his embarrassment after his fall. I started to distance myself from him when I noticed the cars approaching me from the front exit. I was becoming frustrated by this situation, so when they approached me, I simply continued walking. "Excuse me, we require your presence," a voice behind me stated. I glanced over and noticed that it was Coulson. "I appreciate the offer, but I'll pass. I'm sorry, but I don't know you, sir, and I am not interested in men in that way. I prefer women. I am confident that you will soon find someone suitable for yourself," I said with a respectful tone, although internally I couldn't help but laugh like a maniac. "I apologize, young one, but there is an individual who wishes to speak with you," he stated confidently, a smile adorning his face. 2 agents stepped forward from behind him, reaching out to restrain me with handcuffs. When one of them did, I firmly confronted him, causing him to suffer some injuries. My adrenaline surged as I realized there was an individual in the rear of the vehicle that Coulson emerged from. She had blonde hair, but she was wearing something on her face to alter her appearance. Nevertheless, the energy emanating from her made her quite noticeable now that I was nearby. I could tell that this was Carol Danvers in disguise. I utilized my telekinetic abilities to disable the surveillance cameras in the vicinity. I was casually strolling away when I noticed her approaching me with haste. Only a select few would catch a fleeting glimpse. I observed her approaching me with great intensity. As she approached, she firmly gripped my shoulder and applied pressure. "It would be greatly appreciated if you could accompany us without causing any disturbances," she said, with a confident wink and smirk, as if she believed she would easily come out victorious if we were to engage in a fight. It wasn't a display of arrogance, but rather a self-assured demeanor. As I delved into her thoughts, I couldn't help but feel a mix of relief and slight disappointment that she didn't embody the enlightened persona with a trendy hairstyle, resembling Brie Larson. I firmly grasped her hand on my shoulder. "If you're up for a challenge, I'm ready," I exclaimed eagerly, unable to contain my excitement. I gently nudged her, causing a look of surprise to cross her face. Stay tuned for more. And that's a wrap for now. Thank you so much for tuning into this incredible video. If you absolutely loved it, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for even more amazing content coming your way.